Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the War Report. As you can probably see by the title, we're joined by a very special guest. I'm sure your first time, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're honored. You know, he dwarfs us in terms of audience and membership. But no, it's good to always have Geo back, especially when we have, dare I say, autistic deep dives to go into. And while the show will not be solely focused on this, and just for context, we are recording this the night of February 24th, 2026. The State of the Union is on right now. We'll talk about that at a later point. There's so don't expect any of that.
We're gonna have a live feed.
Uh, we'll have the premiere chat, but like I said, I always like to do these things pre-recorded because in my opinion it always makes for a smoother production. But I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty. I'm not going to bore everyone with all the technical autism I have to deal with. But speaking of autism, we have the two big things that we're going to try to focus on. I'm sure other things will come up in the meantime. Are of course the files, of which all of your enemies are in and nobody you like is in. Okay, that's my official position. Fill in the blanks however you need to. But everyone you hate is in the files. Everyone you like is absolved by the files. Let me just say that first and foremost. And then, of course, I think that's inevitably going to lead, just by pure coincidence, into the situation surrounding Iran, which we plan on tackling both of those over these next, I don't know, say 2 or so hours. We'll see how long it takes us. We'll probably be here pushing the 4 hour mark soon enough. But uh, you know what? We'll play it as it goes. So it's going to be a little bit of a different format as we were kind of discussing before the show, and just kind of open floor. I guess I'll just ask you both first. Just over this past better part of a month, I don't know, we're looking at almost a month of this being at least part of the so-called discourse. What are your broad brushstroke, no pun intended with Geo being here, uh, take on the situation?
Um,
Go ahead,
Let me
G.
start off, okay? Epstein is the essence of the modern world. He is the modernity itself. The Enlightenment, the liberalism, the violent free market economy, and AI, the singularity, the Palantir, the BlackRock, Davos trilateral bioweapon, the harvest of organs, the cloud
So true.
It's so insane.
100% right. True. True.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
Now, care to tell the audience who they're agreeing with?
I don't even want to say.
Let's just say he.
What, we're gonna leave it.
Yeah, we'll just leave it. Let's just say,
Let's just say the person who said that is somebody's brain.
yeah, that
Freeman's mind. That's
Yeah.
it.
you,
Yeah.
you took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh,
But
no, people were okay. For those who don't know, it was Dugan.
who?
I'm not. Who? I don't know. Some obscure.
Everybody
academic.
knows now. Like we were joking off there. Millions of young Western men will be led astray by this.
No, but you know what's funny though is that people like during that tweet, like, and again, like, just to say this publicly, I don't consider myself a quote unquote Duganist or whatever, but like,
Well, no, by being on the show by association, you're a Duganist because we're Duganists. Because everyone who is not a neocon is a Duganist. That's
exactly.
rule number one. So
no,
just
but
embrace it.
It's funny you bring that up, Constantine, because that was like people were like trying to find different ways to get angry at it. So like you have the
Yes.
quote unquote dissident right, who is like, well, some of them were like he didn't name certain groups. Other were like, well, he's like, anti-American, anti-Western. He's anti my daddy Peter Thiel. Then there were like, of course, leftoids that hate him because, well, he's Dugan, Russia, funder of global fascism, blah blah blah. So but it's funny though because I think like I know I'm joking, right? And I say this as not like
Yes, this is a
Dugan
comedy
show.
program first and
Yeah,
foremost.
exactly. So, but I'm saying this not as like a Dugan or a Russia shill or whatever. But so disclaimer. But I do think that what was funny is that despite all everybody like from different angles attacking this take, and like yes, it's polemical. I think like literally, I don't really take anything Dugan says on Twitter seriously, right? But at the same time, it kind of was something that a lot of people who have been digging into this topic for a while were saying, in that okay, you look at very ancient sources of power, and you look at um there was always, you know, rituals, sacrifice of little people, let's call it, for YouTube, and there was always sort of,
Very Carthaginian, just to
yeah,
hammer the
yeah,
point home.
and there was always a sort of method of the revelation of the method, or is that what they call it? Yeah, where it's like, you know, everything's hidden in plain sight. But when you look at the actual emails and you look at these elite networks that were coordinating either through their sense of self-preservation or to share a power, or because a lot of them are sick, perverted degenerates that need to get their fix, and Epstein was the guy, you do see a sense that the way that like power has manifested in modern quote unquote liberal democracy, or the sort of like post enlightenment, post nation state, like global rules based order, whatever you want to call it, transnational progressivism, that the sort of uniquely modernist sense of how power is structured and regulated throughout the globe, you know, away from the ancient regime, away from the right of kings, away from sort of very ancient power structures. How do you have a figure like Jeffrey Epstein in a managerial, technocratic sort of global managerial state, right? You still have a different form of power turning in itself and operating in a certain way through influence, through blackmail, through pleasure, of every sick and depraved kind. Although, if you're someone like Michael Tracy, you say, you know, oh, that's based actually, but whatever. So, um, what's very interesting, this is something that a mutual on Twitter, Present Witness, shout out to Present Witness, he talks about like, okay, barring the more outlandish claims about like, you know, human sacrifice and cannibalism, whatever, what it does reveal to people is the way that global power operates in this quote unquote global managerial system. We're far removed from the ancient regime. We are far removed from a very personal form of political influence, but yet it remains, yet it's still there. So when someone like Dugan says, like, you know, Epstein is the modernity, it's like, kind of, actually, you know, like the way that this particular manifestation of influence and depravity and you know, blackmail and intelligence agencies intersecting with geopolitics and so on and so forth, that could only have come about from our system. And I think that was like, to me, people were like banshee screaming at the stake, but it's like, there's something to it. There's something obviously to it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
how, yeah. But anyways, yeah. Go ahead. I'm trying to
No,
like
no. I think,
formulate
I
this
think,
in my
I
mind.
think those are great points. I mean, yeah, Dugan has a point here, but and you know, I would say like, you know, the American deep state, even just the Americans in general, have had to like work really hard to discredit like even Dugan's name about anything he says. Anything that anyone ever repeats about Dugan, like you see this, it's very extreme online behavior. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
idea that like no matter what any one person says, if they're branded this way, then everything they say is wrong. Now, obviously, like what Dugan is saying, like nobody's gonna like pick up a book by Dugan after this. Like, who's you either know him or you don't. And I mean, he's been a commodity for decades now, and you know they want they. It's kind of like it's how like the online right and the left in America. It's their own personal Russia gate. It's you know inflating the amount of power someone has from Russia than they really do. Like
yeah.
for instance, there's a Ukrainian friend of mine, and he posted something that Putin said about, the vampire ball is coming to an end. And Putin said this like long before the Epstein files were dumped. Now, he said, he goes, well, but you too are vampire Putin. Like it's all this kind of stuff. It's like I'm sorry, that you have to depend on Judeo-Anglo pedo empire to like make your country something, but that's what it is. And the week before, he was like literally sending me stuff from the New Yorker and the BBC, especially the BBC stuff about
Yeah.
how Epstein was a Russian asset.
Yeah,
And I'm going like,
yeah. And there's dissident rightoids who are parroting that
what
mainstream
is
talking
wrong with
point.
you?
Yeah.
Again, it's the inflated, grandiose ego. Of course, Epstein has to reach out for him, and of course, Putin can't reply because they know we're going to be watching them in 11 years when the files get like. They're so. I've never. I mean, these people are really moronic. They're
No,
really,
wait,
really
wait,
stupid.
GSP, wait a second. You know where Putin got that phrase from?
Where?
He got that from Mark Fisher, exiting the Vampire Castle essay. Nick Land, CCRU, accelerationism, all Russia, all
Oh.
Russia. Mark Fisher, acid communism, Russia, Russia.
Yeah.
Get it? Like Nick Land, Russia, Curtis Yarvin, Russia, Alex Jones, Russia.
Everything's Russia.
Guys, I got some bad
Everything's
news in that regard. I'm looking right here with my setup in my makeshift studio in this tin can of a room I'm living in. And you know what I have on my desk right next to my primary monitor that I'm looking at?
No.
I have a Russian nesting doll.
No.
Oh, boy.
I
Oh.
knew it.
And what's
This
inside
is-
of it? A smaller one.
I wanted to quote something from Dave Troy. I believe he's like one of these Owens whatever people, and he's like one of these British media darlings. Russia created Epstein.
Oh,
Russia
yeah.
exposed Epstein. This is a clear strategy of demoralization. What? No one has heaped more praise than Representative Thomas Massey
Yeah,
than
oh my
Russian
God.
proxies. The hope that we lost faith in this is the kicker. This is why I brought this up. The hope is that we lose faith in elites, in government, and in democracy. This sets the stage for escalation. We should be careful about falling for this trap. So, not only is Jeffrey Epstein a Russian asset, but you also have this double move of Epstein minimization from the left because it's undermining faith in the EU and Washington and
all
Western
the
elites.
greatest things. All the greatest things about the West.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
EU.
You have right wing Epstein minimization because Trump's in office. Then you have the left wing, which is equally ridiculous Epstein maximalism, where it's only Trump and only those people on the right and Steve Bannon, only their pedophile. Then you have the stupid fucking Hananiite, Tracyite minimizer, min-maxing, where it's there's nothing there. And then you have down the road, you have this other influencer who I won't name, where it's it's based, it's aura farming. It's all sides. It's such a fucking, we're this is what Baudrillard warned us about. This is hyper-reality. This is simulacra. This is Epstein is a hyper object.
I want to
That's
make a
it.
little bit of a
That's my take.
pedantic point on all of this, but I do want to point out because something I have consistently thought about since
So
this
much there. There's so much there.
since this entire narrative has started is how much people overestimate the reach of Russian intelligence post-Soviet Union. Because I mean, let's look. We've done the show for almost like 8 years at this point, and I mean, you can go back through the show records. I mean, the number of times we have seen Russian intelligence caught completely flat-footed by the most harebrained of Western schemes is embarrassing for the Russians. And I say that as somebody who doesn't have an anti-Russia agenda, somebody who actually has a little bit of a soft spot for the Russians, if you haven't guessed it at this point. But, I mean, we're talking about a country that post-1991, of course, people love to talk about, oh, it's the KGB, Putin's the KGB agent. No, the Russian state had to rebuild every aspect of its state infrastructure from scratch. The Ukrainians had more to work with. The Belarusians had more to work with post-Soviet
Polish had
Union.
more to work with.
Yeah, that's how bare bones the Russian Federation was in 1992. And while yes, there is continuity, there is holdovers. Putin, of course, does have the KGB background. There are people from the old Soviet elite who are powerful in Russia. There's no denying that. But in terms of the state apparatuses and the state institutions, those had to be rebuilt from the ground up mostly. So the idea that Russian intelligence is what it was even, say, in the 1980s is a complete fantasy. You want me to believe, and this is a point I've been making for years, the same intelligence agencies that were not able to prevent the Maidan got Trump elected and ran Epstein's ring.
Because that's what the plan was. You don't understand, you idiot.
Yes, I'm very low IQ. I'm not elite at all. I'll be the first to admit all those things.
Yeah, you see what I mean. This is it. Like their logic always has to fall back on, like all the mistakes that whatever their elites do, somehow involve Putin executing the most elaborate schemes.
Agent
Even
Krasnov, ever since, I don't know,
Krasnov.
1986 or whatever.
Yeah.
Trump married a Czech. Don't you think that's a little coincidental?
They flipped him in 1986, Donald J. Trump. Yeah. They flipped him. No, but what I... Oh, sorry, GSP, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything. No, go.
My point is that I just... At this point, I kind of don't care. I'm actually that pissed off that I really don't fucking care anymore. The amount of discourse I've been seeing, particularly on people that should have really capitalized on this. Put it this way. The online right was given probably the best gift they were ever going to be given. Given the backbone, and again, a lot of people don't know the history or they're trying to deny it because they're trying to maneuver to being political pundits.
Yes, everyone's peddling a narrative. It's just that simple. Even we're peddling a narrative, but we have no influence. But I digress.
Right. No, but the point being is that if you find yourself as a sort of like heterodox thinker, allegedly dissident, but you're trying to do this like mainstream punditry thing that you wanted to escape from, so also it's verboten to speculate on conspiracy theory, quote unquote. But you're trying to say that, oh, we're trying to move away from the kookery and all of that, even though a huge swath of the right wing, especially in America, was built upon both the conspiracy theory movement as it intersected with, evangelical Christianity on its fringes, and also a lot of other things that you're trying to denounce to gear for some kind of mainstream acceptability. So you're going to downplay the Epstein thing. But also, you're trying to say, well, if you, this is like, the Me Too movement. And also, like, if you really want to solve the fertility crisis, then, you have to make it acceptable to go out and 14-year-olds. It's like, okay, go and say that. So at the one end, you're saying we have to appeal to normal people. But go to any normal person now. Because I'm telling you, normies talk about Epstein now. Go to any normal person and be like, oh, well, really, this is like Me Too. You know that, right? Like, this is like, they're trying to like, they're trying to like tear down our base, heckin' wholesome ephebophiles. Go to any normal person and say, so in other words, it doesn't make sense.
You see, Harvey Weinstein was too base, so that's why they had to take him down. Same with same with Epstein, same with all these people. Yeah. They were just too base to tolerate.
They're gonna solve the Western fertility crisis. I've seen this take, right? So in other words, the right wing was given probably one of its best breaks in multiple generations because the people, but what do? They snatch victory, they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
By going down this road of like, well, do we really know that they were, like Michael Tracy, do we really know that they were a pedophile? And we don't really know. And that woman was lying, and she's clearly mentally ill. after, you know, I mean, I don't know, like being trafficked by Ghislaine and Jeffrey, I don't know, that kind of will make anyone mentally ill. You know what I mean? And
I'd
so
say so. I mean,
yeah, and so they were given the history of right wing thought in North America, and given all of the things we saw with certain, you know, fast food related incidences,
uh-oh.
and the history of the conspiracy movement, right? This should have been the crowning moment. But what do? You automatically give it over to the political left, who's going to make the most wild and retarded and speculative version of the Epstein thing to only target like Trump and Bannon. And don't get me wrong, like Bannon has a lot of dirt in his, you know, a lot of blood in his hands.
Oh, trust me, I'll get into
You know,
that.
we'll get into that, right?
As the time comes, but
they fumble it, and they fumble it in the most monumentally stupid way, because it makes you look like a ghoul to the average person, to be like, well, you know, I don't know if they're just like, you know, fucking like space to fucking chores, and they all wanted it. And okay, here's the thing. I know I'm like moral F slurring right now.
No, please do.
I know I am, but okay, so let's go down this road. Let's go down the Richard Hanania, Michael Tracy road, okay?
I'd rather not, but
I'd rather
if you must.
But granted, okay, so you're saying, okay, let's bar like little people under the age of majority, under the age of consent, okay? So they're all like teenage children. If you go to the average person and you're like, oh, you know, rich people trafficking legally aged women, that's not as bad, you know, that's, and sometimes men, by the way, sometimes men. It's like, you know, who cares about that? Who cares about, you know, it's like, it's prostitution, it's whatever. It's like, you know, he was living his best life, Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, no, even if it wasn't, first of all, there's a lot of evidence to suggest it was actually literal, you know, young people, right? Under, let's say.
Oh yeah. Take a look at his Amazon purchases. So
right.
he bought girls' private school uniforms,
Right.
baby clothes, baby food, vaginal tighteners. He like FBI outfits, right?
Right.
And you know, he's sharing torture videos, and then there's that exchange with like, this girl is young, she is 14 or under, and she has somehow ended up in his premise.
Oh, but that was someone, according to Michael Tracy, that was someone warning Jeffrey Epstein about this.
No. This little girl would pray to Jesus at night.
Yeah.
And he suggested to someone else in one of the emails that they should dress up like Jesus the next time they saw her.
Oh God.
Right?
Yeah.
He's a sick piece of shit. He was a piece of shit, and that's all you can say about it. And but in many ways,
I think I've changed my mind on a couple things. Can we go ahead and bomb Iran and get World War III started? Can we just wipe the slate clean with all of this?
No, but my point being is that even if it was all quote unquote legally aged women, there still is.
They were not.
They were not. They were not. But I'm saying hypothetically, GSP, if we were to believe like Richard Hanania for his word, right? If it was all legally aged, you're still engaging in human trafficking. You're still engaging in an incredibly destructive, nihilistic, and disgusting industry. Like, you're still engaging in prostitution, and you are at an elite level where you can basically do whatever the fuck you want to these women and these young boys in some cases as well. And people are like, oh, but you know, that's like Me Too. And here's the thing. This is the mind poison of the 2010s, okay? Now, yes, the Me Too movement went way too far. And when leftists, for example, say that there's like power and privilege, a lot of it's bullshit when it comes to average people engaging in relations with each other, right? But when it comes to these people that essentially run the world, okay, there is a structural power analysis that is actually kind of warranted. Where it's like, okay, these people are elites, they're above the law. They're above the law in the sense of like the Agamben, Schmittian, like they decide the exception to exclude themselves out of the law, right? You know what I mean? So they have an immense degree of leeway when it comes to anyone that they're preying upon. So that analysis of power is actually warranted. And you don't have to like bring in some like muddying of the waters of all of this like ridiculous me tooings that happened during the 2010s. Because that analysis, when it comes to this level of things, is correct. Because and it's similar to when people say, why would Epstein just on an open Gmail account like write all of these things down? Okay,
Because who's gonna touch him?
Exactly, because if you know the fucking founder of Google, if you know the founder of Apple, if you know the CEO of Apple and Google and Microsoft, if you're best buds with Bill Gates,
Ugh.
what are you gonna do? What, you think people are gonna like some Interpol court is gonna get you? Fuck no.
No, they're
Like,
bragging. It's a way of
Yeah.
bragging that consequences
Yeah.
have no consequences for anything they do.
The average pet engaging in CSAM, they have to worry because the law will go after them. But when you're at the level of Jeffrey Epstein, who the fuck do you have to worry about?
It's like you and I,
You know?
who had to turn on our VPN because we want to insult Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
The word, like I said, the state will come down harder on us for mocking one of them or for saying the wrong thing or being mean to certain ethnicities or religious
Right.
groups. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, we have to hide our faces and our names and turn on our VPNs and do all of that to do something that is ostensibly completely legal. There's nothing wrong with any of that. If we were to believe
But
in
that's
the American
exactly.
mythology, it's free speech. But no, the thing is, it's because these people will not be touched for it. Epstein getting liquidated was because, let's be honest, he probably became too hot of an asset to continue on.
He was too reckless.
Yeah.
And who was above him?
Exactly.
That does it even better, right? So the point being is that even though if you were to totally believe people like Richard Hanania, where it's like, oh well, I guess Epstein was just going after jailbait. He wasn't going after literal little people, right? It's like, okay, but you're still engaging in something that is depraved and immoral and disgusting. Now I understand, a lot of these people don't have that conception of morality. I understand, okay? But you're still copying for people that, if you read the emails, people that fundamentally hate you and control the levers of power to make sure that you'll never get ahead.
And this is
the
something
system that your forefathers built. And it's I do not understand. One last point, because I know.
No, please do, because
One last point. All these people, I'm not going to name names beyond a few people that I've already mentioned, but you can guess who's been doing it. What do you get out of this? Is it the pursuit of truth? That, it's a moral panic. But, okay, but even if it wasn't a moral panic, even if the most outlandish claims were barred, even if the claims towards cheese pizza were out of the equation, okay, you're still copying for someone that fundamentally hates and despised you. And you're copying for people, a global elite, that work every single day to make sure that you are entitled to nothing. Even if all of the claims were untrue, it's like, what the fuck do you get out of this? What do you get out of going up there and being like, I don't know if it was actually really cheese pizza related things. I don't know if it was really, if they were that. I think it's these evil conspiracy theorists and don't you know that one guy went crazy and tried to shoot up a place? And it's like, okay, so it's like you're engaging on one end that I'm a dissident pursuer of truth and I'm against the mainstream. But on the other end, you're saying that we have to rein in these crazy conspiracy theorists. And don't you know that actually politics does work on the surface of things, the way that the mainstream media treats politics, that it does operate on the surface of this, global technocratic managerial state, that there's no such thing as a deeper political thing going on, that actually we have to just focus on hard-nosed public policy, and all this is a distraction. Distraction from what? If you're not willing to look at how the movers and shakers of global power, what they actually think and feel and believe, and how they actually operate, then I'm sorry, you're just chasing shadows. That's what people are doing. And for the even the more depraved, like trolling of people and victim blaming and saying that this victim was a fucking full of shit or she was like some little slut that deserved it. It's like I do not understand. I can't for the life of me. And you know what? I'm really sick and tired of this shit. I know I don't make my peace known on Twitter because I'll be attacked, but it's like I do not understand okay, I do understand like the more lurid conspiracies, not wanting to buy into like, Q shit or whatever. But it's like like minimizing Epstein as a whole. I do not see any benefit on either side, the left or the right. What that would give you. I just don't. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's because ever since I was a kid, I always loved conspiracy theories or whatever, and me and my old man would listen to Coast AM. But it's like I just don't get it. I just don't. What can you guys fill me in? What do these people get out of minimizing Jeffrey Epstein?
You touched
saying that he was nothing.
You touched on a few points that I'm glad you did that I want to address. Number
Woo!
one, first
Holy shit, I'm glad to get that off my chest.
First
thing with Vincent Gallo said, he's like, man, Howard Stern, I should get my own radio show. This feels great. But anyways,
first and foremost, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm tired of these morons who are like, oh, well, you care so much about Epstein, but what about the grooming gangs? As if the people in the Epstein files are not responsible for mass migration. I mean, we'll talk about Mandelson later, but like, he was the architect of the migration crisis in the UK, effectively.
You know who let off Jimmy Savile the first time around in the mid-2000s?
Who was that?
Keir Starmer, when he was he was a
that sounds about right. Secondly, to touch on one of your points, while I do think there are plenty of bad actors, people being paid off, the regular shills, one thing I do want to say is I think a lot of people are obviously they're in a cope mode, but what we just saw is 10 years of what we thought was organic political movement get exposed as a complete control op job. That you have Bannon and Noam Chomsky snickering to each other in the same email chain. And that is going to make a lot of people who have been in this since 2015, 2016, since the early days of the first Trump campaign, start to realize that, like, especially if they have been deeply involved in this, especially if they've actually suffered consequences, whether they've lost a job, broken off family relationships, whatever it might be, even maybe faced legal harassment or legal action in some cases. What they have to realize is what I've effectively dedicated the past decade of my life to, if I'm to be honest with myself, was a scam. And that's not only true of a lot of right-wing movements, that's certainly true of a lot of left-wing movements as well. Like I said, it's all encompassing.
Chomsky.
It's like I said, Bannon and Chomsky
movement.
in the same email chain snickering with each other. So at a certain point, it sends people into, I would say, a state of denial because they realize, like, well, what the hell have I been fighting for the past decade, if not longer, if this is all the case?
No, but here's another thing too. Now, like I've chastised the political right, but let's focus a little bit on the political left.
Please do, and then we'll get into, because I want to talk about Mandelson, the UK stuff, but please go on.
The leftist discourse around Epstein is the most retarded thing I've ever seen. It's even more retarded than the right wing version. There's a lot of legitimate things when it comes to Bannon's role of directing the political right in North America towards things like, crypto Zionism, being anti-white women. That was a big thing on Breitbart. Stuff like that. The culture war things. That's a legitimate concern of the right wing being controlled up. But what does the left do? They go with the most outlandish and retarded things ever to say that because of what would you say, Constantine?
I said naturally.
Naturally, yeah. Like, we're like, oh, you're all, you're actually, if you care about what we're doing, the side that actually does promote, things to do with, like, little people when it comes to certain identity politics things and when it comes to normalizing cheese pizza, they're like, no, you're the real cheese pizza-ist because of one email where Jeffrey Epstein mentions Moot during when he created the politically incorrect board. And they're like, oh, all the Gamergate culture war, your support, a cheese pizza-ist, Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, instead of going after the connections between Bannon, it's not that, like, Epstein and Bannon and the controlled opposition right is to get you to hate leftist identity politics, be it like the trans issue or whatever. No, it's for other reasons. It's for other, you know what I mean? But they'll never touch those things. So it's like the left has an incredibly stupid and reductive way of going about it because the political right, or at least the influencer class, has given up and has given them the Epstein thing. But of course, what they do with it is incredibly stupid. Now, there's a certain, there's other like parapolitics people that have actually had a mature and developed response towards this connections between Epstein and Bannon. But the vast majority of discourse on like the streamer, Zoomer political left is stupid. It's actually more stupid than the right wing Epstein minimization.
You know, it's kind of a sad state of affairs, all things considered.
What?
With all due respect to the gentleman at the Duran, I watch their program often. It is pretty middle of the road. It doesn't. It gives you the basics of what you need to know, and I do think their analysis is off sometime, but I'm not going to get into the weeds for that. When they're one of the better people covering the Epstein stuff, you know we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, they had a bit of a banger today too, on Mandelson.
Oh yeah, like I said, while a lot of their stuff is kind of bare bones, I think once you get to like our level, not to talk ourselves up too much, when they're on it, and I would recommend their most recent program to anyone who hasn't heard it yet. But yeah, I do think that's kind of a bleak state of things when you have to go to like kind of like geopolitics 101 to find out the truth about this stuff.
No, because I think the thing is the whole Epstein thing is. I was gonna write an article about it, but then I decided against it. Maybe
I do think that despite what people will say about, within political discourse, and I'm talking about the average person, you can see that in all of this, people have invested greatly into not just political discourse, but what today passes as Western culture.
Yeah.
Right? They have bought into it completely. And this is why they want to minimize just, how powerful and depraved someone like Epstein was. Right? Also, they've been used to, since, like, they've been used to, I've said this before, but the West is infected by its own property, where their sense of moral superiority compared to other countries it kind of guides this discourse, right? And now that it's shown to be as decadent and as corrupt, and this kind of cursive discourse has been around for a solid 10, but I would say more like 12, 14 years. So even before the first Maidan. And I think that's always been an issue for them. And now, countries like Russia present this mirror to them, and it's driving them crazy. Now, of course, a lot of people, like I spoke to this one woman she's not originally from Canada. She came here when she was a teenager. She's from Trinidad. Her father saved up money so the kids could go to Canada for opportunity. He never left. Neither did his wife, et cetera, et cetera. And she thought like all the Epstein stuff was fake. She thinks it's fake. And I go, you think it's fake? But then when you bring up like, I didn't expect her to know who this was, but like Thorbjorn Jagland, the former prime minister of Norway, now he's been arrested. And it turns out that yesterday he tried to commit suicide in his cell. Right? Like
by his own hand or Clinton style?
Yeah, it's only Europeans getting arrested. It's not like anyone in America.
Yes, and that's because that's because they're periphery to the empire, and America represents the center of the empire. But thank God there's an armed populace.
No, but it's only European leaders, eh? Like it's never like when it comes to like the heartland of the empire, it doesn't. There's an immobility
so far,
to power.
There's nothing. So far, I want to say so far, because I really don't care. Like I don't care if Trump gets nailed. There's some very questionable stuff where Trump could be implicated with underage girls. Um, within the emails back and forth between him and Epstein. Uh, Now, I mean, the thing with Trump is he's not a drinker, as far as we know. Now, he is an adulterer, and he was also an adulterer during his first term. But I would say that the beauty pageants or whatever, not the beauty pageants that you saw. I'm talking about the ones associated with Epstein. These are not televised, right? He's implicated, right? Now, I don't care if he gets brought down, right? I personally don't care who gets brought down, but will they be brought down? I think we have to look for what happens in the UK first. So far, uh, the two biggest um, public figures that have been arrested. Uh, not the former Prime Minister of Norway. Most people will never know or even remember him, but
The
are
one
of
that isn't
course,
Stoltenberg.
Hmm.
yeah, right. Is the former Prince Andrew, Mountbatten, and uh, Mandelson. Now Mandelson, of course, exchanged many dirty emails with Epstein. Les Wexner did to a degree. Now Wexner, like one of the reasons why someone like Les Wexner might not get it is he's very interconnected. Like he bought an airline, like a small airline service in Florida before he moved base to Ohio, and that that airline, which had even small planes, was associated with the CIA. And there was a point where they were starting to use this airline. Of course, the fleet expanded. I would presume it did because they're now flying to China, so forth and so on. But Les Wexner is implicated in some of these wrongdoings as well, and of course he's part of the mega group. So this I suppose the loose confederation of rich Jewish American billionaires, Zionists, all concerned, deeply concerned for the fate of Israel. I mean, we've known ever since those university deans who were fired during the Biden administration in 2023 who really runs America. And a lot of people, they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed that America is run by these people. So they have a vested interest in minimizing this because it's a stain. It's frankly embarrassing. And it's not like they're going to draw comparisons. People who are very online and political are going to draw comparisons with other countries that are not under such yoke. And it's embarrassing for them. So that's one of the reasons why they try to minimize this. And then you have like people, who've I've seen this on Twitter, who make arguments like, what's that publication that Candace Owens used to be part of? Ben
Daily
Shapiro,
Wire.
Daily Wire. Yeah, they had like one of the writers say, you know, this isn't a Jewish operation, and I might like it having a Jewish boss. So I think these are big sort of subconscious ideas that exist in the American populace, at least the one that is willing to get politically engaged online. Like I say, it's just it's embarrassing for them, and it's a cope.
Yeah, I think. Well, to be fair, like, I think that when it comes to Trump's involvement, there is like a lot of gray area there. There's like a sort of like nebulous assertions, and like he did have like at one point a contentious relationship with Epstein, and but he certainly like
So did Bill Gates, but it
yeah, and so
doesn't
did Bill
change.
Gates,
It
yeah.
doesn't change what he did.
But the people around Trump like we're full. Like you mentioned, Les Waxter. Like it's like it's not looking good.
And
Like
Lutnick.
and Lutnick, yeah, and well, I think Lutnick had like a lot of very deep ties to Epstein.
Very.
Yeah,
El-
like I mean,
Let me
even
just
even like Robert Maxwell had he had some crazy thing with the Nixon administration. He also had someone, I believe my friend Capolissimo from Sidebar, he was telling me that um, Robert Maxwell had ties with a certain people involved in the cheese related thing. I forget. There was a huge connection there between Podesta and Robert Maxwell. But no, but what I was gonna say is like, yeah, but the British elite, a lot of them are fully for years now were involved in this type of thing for multiple decades. We're involved in pizza related stuff.
Oh yeah.
So,
And
but anyways,
but
go ahead.
before I get into that, I will say, insofar as Trump is concerned, even if we can exonerate him against the claims against himself personally,
Right.
it does show he's part of the network and that he's compromised, and that the whatever hope there was of Trump being a vehicle of our interest is, if it's not completely destroyed, it
Yeah.
is 99% destroyed, as it
Well,
were. That, like I
yeah.
said, he could be clean as a whistle insofar as this is concerned, but being part of this network, being adjacent to it, shows that no, he's not going to move things in our direction.
Well, you know, Bannon was a huge architect of the MAGA movement. That
Oh,
is,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
undisputed, right? So, I personally think maybe Trump wasn't involved personally to the extent of like the little people, but like there still is a lot of ground there to criticize Trump over this.
I'll say
And the thing is,
I'm not
the
going to.
political left is
He's
just,
more. He's more. I mean, people criticize Starmer. Trump is certainly more implicated than Starmer.
well, yeah. But at the same time, GSP, the British have their own networks outside of Epstein. Like I mentioned, Jimmy Savile, and like Starmer was integral to getting him off.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean, sure, I
yeah.
get that. I get that.
Yeah.
I understand it, but you know, like I say, I don't really care what happens to Trump.
Right. Yeah.
Like it will probably be well deserved, but I think he has a core that will pardon him for virtually anything, and that's partly because they've been corralled into believing that he's their only. They know the direction that America's going. I get it. I'm sympathetic to it,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
and they've been told that your only way out is Trump. If you don't support Trump, there's nobody else. And Trump, of course, has been an enormous disappointment after over a year in office. And I predicted even before he was sworn into office or if he got elected, he would be a disappointment.
I remember those episodes. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I said even in the explainer of why I decided to vote for Trump in 2024 that my expectations were very low, and I expected to turn on him almost immediately, and I did. Pretty
Yeah.
much anything post first Zelensky meeting has just been garbage. I mean, there's been a few glimmers of what looks like might be positive direction, but I mean, most of those have been dashed, and
Most of it has just been making libs angry. That's
Yeah.
pretty much.
and
what
it's
done.
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And with the hockey thing recently, it's making libs angry, which is good.
well,
but
what
still.
somebody said about that I thought was interesting. This was actually back during the whole like ICE nonsense. Is that Trump is giving us the worst of both worlds, where he's enraging the libtards, but also not doing anything to curtail their power. So when they come back in 4 years, it's going to be a vengeance.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So
Yeah.
it's like he's doing all this all these provocative moves, but then not safeguarding his own legacy or his own movement or what he proclaims to stand for. So when you get Gavin Newsom or whatever clown they put up in 2028, he can unleash the feds against all of your favorite right wing personalities.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. If he was like a true like Yarvinite Machiavellian, he would do the opposite. He would be completely quiet with what he's going to do, but of course Trump's incapable of being quiet. And he would just fucking make them illegal. Like that, like what do you think the libs have been doing? They would essentially make being like a progressive illegal in America. But it's like you have the opposite.
They
He
won't
makes a
even
ton of
weaponize the
noise.
IRS. That's the most
Yeah.
basic thing you can
The
do.
most basic fucking thing you could do, right? And like the Minnesota thing, I mean, if they were arresting tens of thousands of illegal even legal Somalians, Okay, fine. Like, but they weren't. So
Yeah,
th-
and
I
that
understand. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
that's
Chris.
the thing about Minnesota. It was a pissing contest with Tim Walz when there's several states where they could have cleared out warehouses of thousands of illegal workers, and that
Right.
they could have made a dent in the numbers by focusing ICE on that. I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but I'm saying it's been pitifully low compared to what could be happening.
Well, they could have also like worked within Minnesota to like turn certain police forces and so
Yeah,
on and so
there's
forth
plenty
instead of having
of
this big
red
spectacle.
counties in Minnesota where they would have had
Yeah.
the full cooperation of the sheriff's department.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have had this huge spectacle
Yeah.
about it that would energize a lot. But here's what I was actually explaining this to my girlfriend the other day. The psychology I think of the American, the American dissident right, is that you see this when it comes to anything to do with Europe or Canada. So okay, my friend Zoomer Schopenhauer, he has this analogy where do you know like say you throw a ball up in the air, right, a baseball. Do you know when like you throw a ball up in the air and there's this moment where it seems to be spinning on its own for a moment in the air, right?
Go on.
So it's spinning in the air. The sort of like crescent of American power in terms of like the conservative right wing whatever movement, the Trump administration say. When you look at the rest of the Western world, when you look at the Anglosphere in particular, not doing too great on a lot. Like Canada keeps losing. We lose everything. We're losing hockey even. And you look at the UK and you look at France and you look at Australia and Germany and so on and so forth. America's sort of like that spinning the ball in the air moment. It's that momentary phase where things are really good, at least culturally. Well, not really. I mean, there's like the leftists still have control of major cultural and media institutions, but for the vibes, okay, the vibes. So say that the American power structure is that ball in the air that's spinning, and everyone else around it is going down into economic stagnation, into severely oppressive transnational progressive policies, into complete cultural irrelevancy, into just fucking the nightmare of the post Enlightenment libtard transnational progressive order. The UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, France, whatever. But America looks really good by comparison, right? But the difference being is that when that ball tends to fall by its own gravity, it's going to be really bad. Because a lot of nations around the Western world, their right wing movements have essentially been destroyed because of this 10 years of Trump. But by comparison, American the momentum of the American right looks good by comparison. But say in 2028 the Democrats get in. When that ball falls down, it's not going to be pretty because there will be no um the sort of like progressive liberal, like, you know, rainbow neoliberal managerial classes within Canada and all these other nations have been entrenched for so long and have used Trump as the justification for their power. When the American right falls, there's not going to be any alternative. There's no one coming to save them. The way that they sort of, you know, basically made being on the right illegal, or at least improbable in a lot of other of these Western nations on the periphery. So I think the reason that a lot of people in America can say, well, we have it better than a lot of these other nations, is that they are in this moment of ascent. But when they do sort of come down, because a lot of this stuff is basically on a time delay, right? When another future Democrat administration looks like Carney's Canada or Starmer's UK or whatever, then it's going to be such a dramatic clamping down and decline that it's like it's going to come down in them like, you know, a ton of bricks. Whereas like these other nations, and I think a lot of people on the political right, there's this tension between like European right wingers and American right wingers and Canadian right wingers, whatever few of us exist, and American right wingers, because a lot of the American right for the past 10 years can say, well, at least we have Trump, right? At least we have Trump. And at least we have like our guy, blah, 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 right? But a lot of people outside of the heartland of the empire, they're like, okay, we're cynical because we accept it, because we know what power looks like. We don't have an alternative. We don't have like the mythical figure of someone who supports us.
Whoa! You're getting ahead of yourself. The European right has the Azov Battalion. That counts for
Oh,
everything.
okay, apart from Azov, yeah, okay, so yeah, exactly, right. So that's why a lot of European right wingers they support Ukraine, because that's the legally acceptable way of accepting.
Safe edgy.
Yes, it's safe edgy, right? So a lot of people on the political right outside of America are very cynical and jaded, rightfully so. But I think when that illusion shatters, that the sort of groundwork of power in these 10 years under Trump has not been laid. I'm not saying I'm not saying anything, right? I'm not casting aspersions on right wingers in America, but I'm just saying a lot of them do have this attitude of like, well, at least we're not these people. At least we
Yeah.
don't have to suffer. But when they get to that stage, it's going to be like when a cocaine addict wakes up the next morning without it's the crash will be legendary.
Oh yeah, we've been touching on this
Yeah.
for the past several years that North America, the United States in particular, is just on a 5 to 10 year time delay when it comes to any of the economic or social issues plaguing
Right.
Europe right now. And that part of the reason for that delay is, especially post-Ukraine war, post-Nord Stream, has just been a liquidation of imperial assets in the hinterlands, bringing them back home to juice up the empire for another decade, hoping that, I don't know, maybe we can crack Iran or crack Russia or crack China and be able to do the same thing to them and
Yeah.
and loot
Absolutely.
them in order to stay alive a little longer because our system is inherently unsustainable.
Right. Well, that's the impetus for the pivot to China as well.
Oh,
that's another.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
without saying. And that's why we need to make sure India is our greatest friend and ally after Israel, which is why we need
course.
to appease Modi, which is why we need to bring in more and more H-1Bs and H-2Bs and just have a large population of subcontinental males who are certainly working legitimate jobs and running legitimate businesses and contributing to the GDP. We need 1 billion Americans by the end of the century. Whatever moron said that, I can't remember. You know the guy, who said the stupid 1 billion American things.
Matty Iglesias.
Yeah, that moron. Yes.
Who I believe is also an Epstein minimizer as well.
Oh wow, what a surprise!
What a
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
My
Well, he
entire
was
analysis
friends
of the
with Nadia.
situation has been thrown through a loop. Okay, I need to hold on. Let's stop the show. Come back next episode. I need to reconsider everything upon hearing that news.
Well, that's people say if Trump annexes Canada, the assumption would be that he would kick out all the Indians.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, I know people who literally believe Trump put away the woke in America. Like, suddenly American schools don't teach like gay sex.
No, they can't do it until they're 12 years old now. Okay, they stop teaching first graders, and they put it off until they're fourth graders. So we're winning. That's progress.
I have a good friend of mine at church who just won't hear it. He goes, I know what you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna say, but et cetera, et cetera. Like, anyways, I mean, I get it. He's the father of four. He has grandchildren. He's sickened by this. Him and I, and sometimes him and I are kind of bewildered why other people aren't more sickened by it. Right? So I understand where he's coming from. You know, I had a friend of mine. She used to say, this is like back in 2019. You know, and I was saying I don't know what they're going to do with the election. I don't know if Trump, he's turning out to be a bit of a disappointment, et cetera, et cetera. And I said I wouldn't count on Trump getting in. I'm not saying he doesn't have enough to win. And she said to me, she goes, you know what? This world is so sorry. This was during COVID, so it was like 2020. And she said to me, I'm sorry. I need to believe I have a chance. And I mean, I had
It's a
to
natural
empathize with
human
that.
impulse. Yeah.
Yeah. She goes, I have children. I need to believe that I have a chance, that I can keep my children safe, that somehow the pendulum can swing the other way. I do get it. Like, I do empathize.
No, but the thing is, though, I think that in some respects the culture has moved a certain way where like people are more open to right-wing ideas. But at the
Yes.
same time, I think a lot of people are overestimating that. I think people, specifically in terms of real political power, has overestimated the Trump Brexit effect that was talked about endlessly at the tail end of the 2010s. If anything, I mean, especially in Canada here, like, you know, if anything, Trump has given a lot of energy and impetus to the, you
Yeah.
know, transnational progressive regimes in a lot of these nations.
I mean, what's the entire
you know,
political platform of the Anglosphere left? We hate
Yeah.
Donald Trump. And, like, I know you
Exactly.
could say that about the Democratic Party, which I do want to get into. This does segue a little bit back into the UK with Prince Andrew, the monarchy, and the Anglosphere in general, because the question is, especially with this, with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I think is his official name now. Funny enough, Mountbatten was also the one diddler who was in Northern Ireland back in the 80s, who got
Oh yeah, that's
blown
right.
up by a car bomb. In which case, I'll leave you to make the moral judgments on your own. I'm not going to say anything one way or the other. But
Yeah.
yeah, interesting connection. I guess it runs in the family or not. Nothing legally binding being said here. But getting back to my point is, of course, Mandelson, who has been something of a kingmaker, no pun intended, in the British political system, especially on the left, he was brought in for questioning, but he's getting treated relatively lightly compared to Andrew. We'll just call him AMW. Everyone loves the three initial acronyms. We'll just call him AMW for the
A&W?
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Oh.
AMW. See, everyone loves the three acronym names: JFK, AOC, FDR. What? I could go on all day, but him. We all know who I'm talking about. The so-called foreign Prince Andrew has been completely thrown under the bus, but that still does not.
Oh, he's your sacrificial lamb.
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to wonder: can the British monarchy, which I would say is the standard bearer, for better or worse, of identity for the non-American Anglosphere nations, all of them, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, one of the primary identifying markers that makes them not American, I'm not saying there aren't other cultural differences, is loyalty to the British crown. But if the British crown is shaken to the core by this scandal, if they're forced to disband in shame, I'm not saying it will happen, but I am exploring the possibility down the line over the next decade or two. I mean, I think Charles, the current king, had some health scares there, and he's quite up there in age himself. The question is, does the monarchy survive? And if it doesn't survive, what is the cultural safeguard, quote-unquote safeguard, against further integration into America proper, especially for a nation like Canada? I think that Australia, New Zealand, and the UK have a little bit more benefit of distance and also cultural differences as well. But especially for Canada, what is that safeguard that prevents them from being really rolled into America? And like I said, I'm not saying any of this definitively. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But especially with the talk around annexing Canada and the various reasons why one might think that would happen, I don't believe this, but I do want to explore the idea that the British monarchy is being taken down in order to facilitate that kind of integration. This is just something I was thinking about the past couple days, and it's not something I want to say I believe is true, but it's an idea that crossed my mind, and I wanted to put it out there.
That they need more direct control over the European sphere?
Particularly the Anglosphere, and that they want to break down one of the last big cultural barriers between America and the other Anglosphere nations. Like I said, it sounds harebrained, it sounds far-fetched, but we've seen them try more bizarre plots in the past, and especially, look, Trump's rhetoric about annexing and integrating Canada, I'm sure it's his own in a very Trumpian way, but there is, in my opinion, a broader sphere of the American national security state that does view that as a strategic imperative. Whether that's officially, whether that's unofficially, they want more direct control over Canada in anticipation of a wider global crisis, whether that be war with Russia, war with China, some sort of conflict in the Middle East, the ability to keep Europe dependent on it for energy resources, which are abundant in Canada that the United States cannot supply alone, even though, I mean, they would be able to. And playing into the Greenland thing, which I know that sort of by association, I've seen that some members of the Danish monarchy have also been somewhat implicated in this because of their connection to the British royal family. Now, I'm not saying, of course, Denmark is an Anglosphere nation, but I do think there is something of a connection. Perhaps I'm reaching too much. But I do think, I'm saying this completely objectively with no strong opinion of the British monarchy one way or another in concept, that eroding it could be part of a broader plan in order to break down cultural barriers, particularly between the United States and Canada. And having two Canadians here, what does it look like on the other side of the border in that regard? In terms of like, I mean, how many Canadians still even care about the monarchy? Because I know the joke is, and there's a kernel of truth, that that Anglo-Canadian identity is primarily distancing itself from America.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, as much as they don't care about the monarchy, they certainly, they certainly hate Trump. But
And it does
yeah,
it does make them feel different than the Americans.
yeah. But then if Trump's gone, though, like if there's a Democrat, especially if there was a Democrat in
Yeah,
2020,
what would be the point then, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
I you know,
Canadian libtards have always got their
there
cues from Democrats, by the way.
there was
They're
a
a bunch of
crazy
hypocrites. They're a bunch of fucking hypocrite pieces of shit. Canadian libtards are basically, we're going to be like blue state Democrats better than the Democrats.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
their
yeah.
whole identity, yeah. But anyways,
Because
go
that's
ahead,
the
TSP.
empire.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
the inner sanctum of the empire.
yeah.
Of course, it's liberal rather than conservative because it's always going in a certain direction. I mean, that's where things have been going for the West for centuries. But
Yeah. Yeah, when Obama was proposing the North American... Do you remember this Alex Jones thing? The North American Union? When Obama was proposing it, they loved that. That was like, oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's...
When
Yeah,
that's right, that's right. When
yeah, yeah.
yes, I do remember that.
The Amero?
Yes.
Do you remember the Amero? They're gonna take out the American dollar and put it in the Amero.
The Constitution. I mean, it was a different time.
Yeah, it was.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember all of that. You know, I saw one of the people I follow on YouTube. This is crazy guy. I mean, he's not crazy. He's very bright, and
Is it Emil Cosman?
no, 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 no. You know what? Let me return to this because the main thought has flown away, as it were.
Oh, about Canada integration into America.
Yeah, Canadian integration. So yeah, so there's a YouTube channel called Dark Age Theorists. And
Oh, I love that guy. That guy's
you like
great.
that guy? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So he did an 8-hour video that begins in the very late 70s and ends in the late 90s or mid 90s. It kind of culminates with the death of Princess Diana. But what it does is it touches on all these inexplicable deaths. Like, for instance, there's the Marconi conspiracy. So Marconi is this electronic warfare company, but it's been around since the days of World War One.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from radio to radar, and then later on, it was creating systems for like electronic warfare, torpedo guidance systems, being able to distinguish jets, and even for the Reagan Star Wars program. And of course, they played a very big role during the Falklands War. But so so there were like over 26 scientists directly connected with Marconi or tangentially connected with Marconi vis-a-vis their jobs with either the British military or with the British government that also interacted with the British military when it came to um, basically electronic warfare. Okay, so a lot of these people are engineers. Now, sprinkled throughout this is, of course, deaths that pertain to the royal family, and it's amazing. The Anglican Church in the 80s and 90s, they were saying we can't have Prince Charles become king because he's divorced. You see how much it's shifted, right? Or if he remarries, if he marries Camilla, he can't be king. This is back when Masons were still not allowed in the Anglican Church. I'm not saying they weren't any, but officially they were not allowed.
And this was for the women priests and acceptance of homosexuality, right?
That's right. It's before this era, right? And you know, Epstein represents the Enlightenment,
The modernity.
the modernity, the modern. And you can see, I guess you can use the Anglican Church as a barometer in some ways. So sometimes watching, this old footage and listening to what people had to say, newspaper clippings that are featured in this 8-hour video. The video, by the way, is, oh my god, it's it's not like one of those true crime videos that you find on YouTube, because it just spits fact after fact. You literally have to watch it twice, and I'm
It's like an OG Ryan Dawson video. Yeah.
yeah.
I actually
So
have that one in the chamber for my next 8-hour drive, which is probably going to be sooner than later, but that's neither here nor there.
So okay, so
Oh.
this is a very roundabout way of saying that, and of course you see pictures of Mandelson, George Brown, uh, 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 Tony Blair, who helped who get elected, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very fascinating that way. But as I said, what will happen to the royal family? I would say that the royal family is like it's a shell. I mean, people could have said 50 years ago or 30 years ago it was the shell of itself, but now it's an even thinner shell of itself. So I don't know if they'll get rid of it, because I don't know what is it about it that is in a contradiction or in opposition. So I mean, you could argue that if we're supposed to have the most pure enlightenment based society, they would have to go, right? But could Britain handle that? I don't know. I mean, I suppose Canada can, but can Britain handle it? I don't know. Um, Again, all these people are they're all very compromised. We know who their rulers are. We know that they're the same rulers that rule America, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I don't know. They're obviously pushing them to be in line, right? Like I remember when former Prince Andrew and Fergie divorced. The media at that time was kind of like saying, "See, even royals divorce. Divorce is cool."
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. And of course, now we find out that Epstein literally bankrolled Fergie for 15 years. That's how tight he was with Andrew.
Well, that's the thing about all of these vestigial European monarchies. I think Spain is probably the most egregious example where Franco's legacy is a constitutional monarch who dismantles his entire regime. Or whatever joke of these monarchies is left in the Scandinavian countries. That the reason why these people were not overthrown, like the Russian monarchy, like the German, the French, et cetera, is because they're docile. They present no threat.
They went along.
And to some degree,
Yeah.
they're useful. There's a
Yes,
reason
yes,
why the Windsors are on the throne and the Romanovs were executed. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think that kind of Enlightenment republicanism had to be pushed in Russia in the same way that it could be tolerated, because it's a Western export.
Same way it had to be pushed in France back in 1790. Same way it had to be pushed in Germany at the end of World War. Like I said, there's countless examples of this. The reason there's no based monarchies is because the based monarchs end up either in exile or executed.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'm not British. I'm not part of the Commonwealth countries, and I can sympathize why one might support the institution of the monarchy, seeing how much of a long-standing tradition it is. But I will say to people in those countries, and I think you guys are pretty much on the same page as me, is that these institutions are of no benefit to you. That it's more honorable to have a deposed royal family than whatever the hell I'm looking at in the UK.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you're like some like weirdo like Lyndon LaRouche type, where you believe like the royal family like controls the world still.
Well, they are Paphrodius Albion personified. It's just that simple. It all
Yeah, the
goes
royal
back.
family still controls the world, but they can't even control Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, I
Oh.
think that that's been one of the great things that have happened since the Epstein files is like all that retarded, stupid stuff. It, I don't want to get into the whole Illuminati nonsense, right?
Right.
But now like these are the tangible people that did horrible things that have tremendous power. Now you know who they are.
And they hate you, by the way.
Yeah, that's right, and they hate you. You know how many
And they
times
call you
that
cattle.
they call you goyim, they call you
Mm.
cattle.
They tax farm your nations. Look at the financial crisis in Europe. I know Greece was the one they're focusing on, but I have a hard time believing that the entire financial crisis in all the pigs countries weren't tax farming for Deutsche Bank.
You know what was crazy? That Jeffrey Epstein may have had a hand in manufacturing like microtransactions in video games.
Oh,
That was another thing.
Oh, I heard about that. Now,
Yeah.
what do you guys?
So he
What do you
kind of
guys?
did cause Gamergate in some way.
so true.
What do you guys think about this whole, the whole scandal with Epstein and
Mark Carney.
no, no.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure it happened, but I don't know much about it. But I was gonna say, what's his name? Chris, the guy who started Poll,
Chris Poole.
Chris Poole, right?
Yeah.
It it does seem kind of fishy, doesn't it? It does seem like another Gladio operation, right? Like another.
Mm.
Again, we've said it over and over again, right? The recipe for the right wing after World War II is that you will be against anything. You will be against the communists, especially the Soviet Union, and then later the Russians, because obviously it didn't even amount to anything. It like, and you will always have a right wing movement that is non-natalist and is always sensitive to Jewish interests. That's it. That's it. Right? And I don't see like
No, but the
I
political
don't
left
see
like
how
took
it
that.
I don't see how this is different.
Right. No, but like the political left, they took it and they went in such a stupid direction. They're like, well, Moot and Jeffrey Epstein, they made you hate trans people. They made you like nobody had right wing beliefs before the 2010s in Gamergate. Like that was obviously stupid.
I also like how self-defeating it is because you could say the
Yeah.
exact same thing about all their meme politics because
Exactly.
it's
with
like
Noam
oh yeah,
Chomsky.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
if anything it just proves the entire what we
Yeah.
understand as left and right, not the
Nope.
actual ideas are all just fake and gay. But in terms of what GSP brought up with Poll, I mean, one joke I saw about it, which I appreciated, is like the idea that Poll is a Mossad psyop originated on Poll itself. But
No, that like even the idea that it's a containment board, which it was.
yeah,
That's the history
yeah,
of
it
Yeah,
was.
it was originated in Poll itself.
Yeah, I completely agree that it was a containment board and that it might have gone too far off the reservations from time to time.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
like it's like I said, the system is compromised to high hell, and you'd be hard pressed to find anything that
Right.
is not compromised in
That's
some
why.
shape
No,
or
but
form.
here's the problem, guys. Here's the problem.
No, please
with
do
the
say.
discourse on the dissident right. The problem is that the left takes the jokes and the memes by certain influencers, not going to name their names, that are like Jeffrey Epstein's based, and that's like based of pedophilia and like hype edits, and like, what they do is they take that as evidence that Moot and Epstein were engineering, quote unquote, the right wing backlash to the Obama years and the culture war. When in actuality, it was right wing containment, and
Yes.
another thread that they're not willing to go or they've neglected that has basically instantiated online politics and like online culture war politics on both the left and the right. The left with like the fucking Chapo Trap House Bernie bro, like ex Bernie bro, irony leftists, and on the right with like all these post Gamergate like alt light influencers. What's the integral part the integral template of online political movements.
It's all
It's
gay.
the new. Well, okay, it's okay, but it's the new atheist movement. Jeffrey
Yes.
Epstein was integral in creating the new atheist movement, and the new atheist movement on both sides, both the irony leftists and the post Gamergate influencers on the political right, they both came out of the new atheist movement. That's one key element in
That is
online
fascinating.
cultural
That
politics.
is fascinating. That
Yeah, yeah,
right, and also that obsession with genetics, genetic augmentation,
yeah.
and then you have a lot of that making headway in the right wing movement, and it did so right after the whole online atheist movement.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. The revolutionary phenotype. Jeffrey Epstein gave me some money. I do not know where my wife went.
Yeah, that's exactly who I was
yeah,
thinking.
Jeff Gruppy. Yeah, 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 yeah. So no, but that's another element of it. And now you have, you know, then on the political left, you also have like the Howard Zinn Chomskyite thing. The abandoning of Michel Foucault in favor of
Chomsky, you
Chomsky.
don't say.
Yeah, yeah. So
There's another Lolita
No,
Express
You mean
guy.
Kurdistan's
And-
strongest ally? I want
no,
you to put some respect
but
to him.
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, yeah. So also integral to all the new atheist movement, you have all of these like TrueAnon style, like Irony Chapo Trap House, Irony Cell podcasters. They all love the YPG
Ugh.
and the Kurds. It's like they're glowed up. The
Mr.
new atheists that
Erdogan,
went to the
we've
right-
had our differences, but we can
Yeah.
find common ground.
That was so great, by the way. When Jelani stabbed the Kurds in the back, and all the irony cells were like, "Oh my god, I really love this guy," even though I pretend to hate what Israel's doing in Gaza, but I really love Jelani for some reason. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe he would backstab the Kurds, my precious wholesome Chungus Kurds. I can't believe this. It's like, well,
amazing
fucking
how
fell for it again, award. Like, fuck. You know, you're gonna trust the Erdogan to protect the Kurds? So you fucking
My Kurdish lesbian fighters.
Oh, but don't worry, guys. I really support Gaza, but I also support Jelani, and I hate Assad, and then like the same people.
And then we're
that
gonna
are
support the
genociding
fake and gay
Gazans.
protests in Iran, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
like, oh well,
Yeah.
the women there dress code, whatever. It's how
But
many
also we're gonna
protesters have been
find a way-
massacred?
Yeah. Like there's a
I mean,
left wing
really, the only
reason to hate
reason-
Iran, and there's a right wing reason to hate Iran. It's like that's exactly. But it was so. Go ahead, guys. So it's
Yeah,
just-
the only
incredible.
reason they're like that is because ultimately it comes down to Russia.
yeah.
They support the Kurds, and they support whatever rebel movement there was in Syria, because Russia supported Assad. It just comes down to Russia.
Yeah.
And it's a typical kind of fell for it again award that
Millennial irony leftists. Yeah.
yes. But that's all it was.
Yeah.
That's all it ever is, and it's strange for all the accusations of being pro Russia. I would say 90% of the people who are slandered as pro Russia just want to view them as just another great power that we have some alignment with and some disagreements with. And I don't think that's at radical of a position. I've said many times before, despite my personal affinity for the Russian nation, my position is ultimately that of Orban, which is balanced between Russia and Europe. But that's not going to happen because 90% of the right and 90% of the left have been fed these schizo narratives that
Yeah.
you see Putin is the boogeyman behind all of it, not Epstein, not any of these people, not anyone in the American elite. See, you can't take Tucker Carlson, you can't trust anything he says. And I'm not saying Tucker Carlson's perfect by any means.
He's a
but
Qatari Russian asset.
yeah, he's a Qatari
Yeah,
Russian
yeah.
asset.
Yeah.
He's in the pocket of Putin directly, and that's why he got to interview him. And it's all the same. It's schizobabble. For as much as people like us are accused of being schizophrenics, and I'll be honest, there's probably kernel truth in that accusation. I never denied that. I would say we look pretty upstanding and sane compared to what's out there. And not just us, but people like us. I'm sure you know the
I-
types.
I
And
think if yeah,
uh,
go ahead.
once again, it's the entire world is insane. Where the sane people look insane. And I know, like I said, that might be talking us and people who agree with us up a little too much, but that's really how it feels. But I think GSP is completely on point. It is this pathological hatred of Russia, which, if you look at both the left and the
It's
right,
really the unifier. It's the
Yeah.
glue of the West.
and if you look
It
at
is the glue of the West. It's what glues politicians, and it's what glues the populists within the West. That's it. It's the hatred of Russia.
yeah,
Maybe it'll be
that's
China someday. Maybe like Chinophobia will be the new thing.
Maybe because they haven't really utilized that yet, have they?
Yeah.
I will say
Right?
Oh, they
Like,
will.
There's no like how many. I mean, they used to. They used to, right?
Free
The yellow
Tibet.
scare, all of that stuff. Particularly before World War II in the interim war period, but also during the Cold War. But you didn't see a lot of it after Nixon visited China.
But
Right.
I will touch on the anti-China sentiment and the reason why I don't think it's as prominent, and that's because
Because they're not white people.
yeah,
That's part of
honestly,
it,
yeah,
but-
it comes
Part of
down
it.
to that where they are too alien of a civilization to be viewed as a threat. Sure, they might boast a great amount of economic and military power, but when it comes to civilizational power, people can look at Russia and they can see something that maybe isn't the same, but looks familiar, looks like an alternative path, looks like what a European country not enslaved to liberalism. Sure, it has some liberal elements, and sure, not everything's perfect, all the necessary qualifiers, etc., 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 but they can still look at a great European power and realize maybe we don't need this charade of liberalism or so-called democracy in order to be a nation that can project interest and can maintain first world living standards, that can go to space even. Maybe the idea that democracy or liberalism or whatever you want to call it produces wealth is inverse, and it's the immense amount of wealth that lets nations experiment with stupid ideas.
You know what was the one base thing that I'm not defending the Soviet Union, but you know the one base thing that they did?
No, here's
Um,
the place to have those nuanced opinions on the Soviet
Who-
Union. Please do.
Who was there during the Spanish Civil War? Was it Stalin?
Yeah, it was Stalin.
Yeah.
One of the only good things Stalin did was he promised a bunch of support. By support, I mean like second-rate Mosin Nagant to the Spanish Republicans, and the Spanish Republicans, fucking retards, fucking fell for it again award. They gave 75% of all Spanish Incan gold reserves to the Russians in exchange for support against Franco. And the Russians are like, okay, thanks for the gold, but we can't support you.
And then sending the
Uh,
NKVD.
Yeah, and good luck, guys. Good luck.
it just
Good
started.
luck, you fuckers.
It just started liquidating everyone who wasn't
Yeah.
pro Stalin. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It just-
Fuckers.
it's-
Fucking anarchist piece of shit. Fuck you.
yeah, I'm so glad George Orwell is such a political luminary after he fights with these church burning communist
So,
atheist bastards.
Stalin
It's
just,
like
rob these fucking
It's-
these church burning, nun raping, priest killing anarchist fuckers. He just robbed them of their gold and gave them shit. Fell for it again, Award. Fell for it.
It's like when he gave the Jews their own homeland in Siberia.
look, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Nobody has done more for the fight against Bolshevism as Joseph Stalin, and for that we should be
He
thankful.
murdered millions of Bolsheviks. Come on, guys.
Well, I mean, literally, that has been one of the critiques that that whole Pax Judaica, the Jews that were unhappy with him in the Soviet Union who left, Anglo power, all of them conspired together to get rid of Stalin. That was their common enemy. We don't see anything all that different now, right? So,
Yeah,
Stalin. Stalin at the
we're
end
not
of
like pro Stalin, but it's
a lot of people don't know this, but Stalin at the end of World War II did not think that Germany had to go through a denazification program. He argued that Germany should not be divided between East and West, that it should just be a neutral country. It's the West that didn't want it to be that way,
Oh yeah, Morgenthau.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to that. The Soviet
right?
Union proposed the Austrian model for Germany, and
Yes.
I think even Poland might have been in that discussion as well, having the Austrian model in Poland. But it was the West. It was what came to be known as NATO, which formed about 6 years before the Warsaw Pact, by the way, that put down the foundations for the Cold War. And that while I'm not saying the Soviet Union would have been, say, for example, a friend of Europe, it could have been another power bloc in which they interacted like any other. Like, it would have returned to great power politics of the pre 20th century world where the
Yeah.
Russians, they're not necessarily our friends, but they don't have to be enemies either. And they could
Right.
have
Well,
played that
what happened
dynamic.
during the Brezhnev years. I mean,
Oh,
there
yeah,
was
yeah.
multiple situations where the West cooperated with the Soviet Union.
I mean,
when
they were
had
building
common enemies.
pipelines throughout the 70s and 80s. Like, the pipeline infrastructure that
Yeah.
exists across Europe today was built under the Soviet Union in cooperation with various Western countries. I mean, even Margaret Thatcher supported building a Soviet pipeline before Reagan threatened to blow it up.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
they were exchanging punk bands in the 80s. There was culture exchange. No, but the point being is that a lot of these debates, if you actually like lurk leftist circles, a lot of these debates are like still going on. Like nothing is new under the sun. That's why they hate Tanky so much. And they hate like Stalin, but they love they love Trotsky because they're like, I'm an anarchist, anarcho-communist, and I'm, a lefty, and you're like a tanky, you're like a red fascist. It's like all this shit is fucking nothing is new. Nothing is new. It's all the same debates. On the political right, the same debates. Go to any episode of like Wally George or Morton Downey Jr. in the 80s. It's the same shit you hear
Same shit.
nowadays.
Absolute nothing has changed. Constantine, I sent you a slide.
Uh oh.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's amazing how
It's nothing
all
I'll
of
have to
this-
censor, right?
No.
Okay. Okay, we're good.
Okay,
Because there's something. I love the
I
name.
know.
I love the name on this account.
What was the GDP of the Soviet Union in 1980s?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think by that point the Japanese had overtaken them. But I think they were
Yeah.
still like in third place.
Yeah, they kind of were in third, fourth place. Yeah.
But-
But,
but-
anyways,
but-
go ahead.
So there's an interesting figure that has popped up in also that nobody's touching in the Epstein files, and his name is Simon Sebag Montefiore. He's, I think, a grandson of Lord Moses Montefiore, a British Jew who was, I guess, illustrious in his time. Anyways, lots of donations to Israel. I'll send you another slide. This is the man in question that we're talking
Oh
about.
no, what's it gonna be?
No, no. Here's an article from the Times of Israel. The Cambridge-educated author, a descendant of Sir Moses, speaks about the holy city that has occupied his family for generations.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy is knows Epstein. He's communicating with Epstein. Wow, no big deal. He goes to a party with Linda Rothschild.
Oh boy.
I just sent it to you.
That was great when I could imagine Jeffrey saying it when people read off the emails, like that one email to Peter Thiel. He's like, "As you may know, I represent the Rothschilds." He wasn't a lawyer. What does he mean by represent the Rothschilds?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is the class that's most offended, right? So, of course, there's letters between him and Ghislaine. He's redacted, but it always says "Love Sebag."
Ugh.
Love Sebag. Dearest Ghislaine.
Ugh.
So, he also openly associated with Prince Andrew and with Weidenfeld, who was a publisher, and an ardent Zionist. Um,
Well, Ghislaine's
Sebag-
father, Robert,
Se-
was also a publisher.
Sebag is the one who wrote Young Stalin and began the myth that he was a pedophile. Isn't that amazing? His friend's a pedophile, and it runs a pedophile ring to trap Western politicians. But he accuses Stalin of being a pedophile, which he wasn't. No, remember that. Remember how that all ties in.
I mean,
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
what more can you? I mean, it's same story over and over,
Nothing ever
and
happens.
nothing ever
Nothing ever
happens.
happens.
That's
No, but here's the thing: you don't have to be like a tanky. You don't have to like
Yeah, of
Stalin.
course.
Obviously, was an incredibly evil figure that committed untold atrocities and destroyed Russia forever.
But he
But
was not a friend of the West, and he's not
yeah,
a friend of the enemies of the West either. So
but the thing is, though, I think the problem is that you must look at a lot of historical figures in especially in the 20th century where things get a lot of muddied. You have to look at them through an objective lens without any sort of
yeah,
like moralizing should come later, right? Like there was a lot of geopolitical happenings going on at the time of Stalin that I almost feel embarrassed that I have to say this. If we lived in a saner world, people would just get this. That we're not being fucking pro Stalin by saying
They'll never get it. They'll never get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll never get it. I'm just saying. I'm just spitting some facts
Yeah.
that run counter to the kind of BS that most people
Right.
are accustomed to.
well.
That's if one thing you take out of the Epstein thing that we're saying today in this episode is that a lot of people have a lot of ridiculous narratives about it, but the truth, I think, is so monumental in terms of its breadth and its grasp that a lot of people, and it's a very human impulse, to instinctively find a cogent narrative that benefits you. I think that is a natural human impulse. But at the same time, the thought of the extent to which Epstein was involved in all of these things is so mind-boggling that it almost borders on a sort of like cosmic pessimism or nihilism to think about global power in such a way. And so a lot of people, they have very cogent narratives that they like to place in a box to make sense of it, or just to like hand wave it away as nonsense and conspiracy theory. And so I think that it takes a lot of effort to truly contemplate a figure like Epstein and people who knows are maybe more effective than him that haven't been exposed yet.
Almost
And
certainly.
I think it's a huge weight on anyone's psyche to look at the connections, to look at the sort of like rhizomatic connections and mapping between these global power brokers and Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that's what drives people to either ignore it completely, say it's irrelevant, or to just pick one side of the equation and ignore all the others. And so, but I cut you guys up. So yeah,
I don't know how far one would want to get down this rabbit hole, and I'm open to it if you guys are. But I just do want to say in terms of the depths of
we
depravity.
have to talk about Iran.
No,
soon,
we
but
certainly
yeah,
do,
yeah.
and we'll round out the last
Sorry about
45
that.
minutes to hour of the show with that. But I have to say, if I did not believe in God, if I was not a Christian, and I encountered these things, and I know this is very strange, maybe even seemingly counterintuitive thing to say about something that is into the depths of depravity. Honestly, I don't know how I would process this information, knowing that there's no sort of cosmic justice for any of this at some point in time. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in our lifetimes. But point being is, and some people might call it cope. If you want to say that, fine, have it your way. But knowing that there will be some sort of settling of accounts before everything is said and done with all of this is probably the only way I've even coped with what little I know of it, because I've been hesitant to dig too deep into the files. But honestly, without that, and some people might say, like, once again, cope, whatever, I don't know how I'd process this information.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But I suppose, speaking of depths of depravity, neoconservative interests, certain ethno-religious interest, and massive destruction, we could talk about this build-up with Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we have our negotiators on the line. We're going to have a deal. Don't worry. Ignore the three carrier groups. Ignore the largest buildup of forces since the Gulf War. We're going to have a deal worked out. Khamenei and Pezeshkian, they're going to voluntarily step down. Reza Shah Pahlavi, or whatever his name is, he's going to reascend the throne as a democratic monarch, and he's going to make sure that Iranian women can wear shorter skirts. It's going to be amazing. Every boomer is going to live out his fantasy. The hostage crisis will be avenged. And Iran is going to establish diplomatic, or Iran will join the Abraham Accords. That's what we're looking at right now. That's what Steve
I've heard
Witkoff
so
tells
much
me.
about the Abraham.
Yeah, the Abraham Accords. That's what they told me. And then Israel's going to build the third temple, and it's going to be great. So don't worry, our negotiators are on the line. They're making this happen. Hey, notice how all the people in the Epstein file want to rebuild the third temple. And like I said, regardless of how much cosmic significance one wants to say to that, maybe you just believe it is just a hokey cult, whatever.
Wait,
And,
as an aside, this is breaking news.
oh no.
Something's happening with Trump's State of the Union and the Congressional Black Caucus.
Imagine my shit. Is the guy waving the pimp cane like he did last year?
It's
Oh
something
my
like
God.
that. I think they're like screaming at him or something. I don't know. I haven't been watching.
Oh, don't worry. We'll
I'll
review
watch
the State of the
clips
Union in full
next week, yeah.
when we do our next episode. And I don't know, depending on how eventful it is, we might have a separate program. In which case, we'd love to have you back reviewing that in particular. But like I said,
I wanted to talk about the Tucker interview with Mike Huckabee, but that
Oh.
I guess maybe for next week or something.
we can if I'll try to find a spot to roll that into the Iran stuff. If not, I'll
Yeah,
hold
we
off.
can
Yeah,
roll
we'll
it
do
in.
that with the Iran. So yeah.
But yeah, with all this, like, and just as part of my side, I think it's strange that hey, all these people who want to build the third temple are in the Epstein files, and they've duped millions upon millions of Christians, particularly in the Anglosphere, particularly in the United States, into believing that this is part of their salvation, which is it's. I mean, that's the.
I was shocked that Tucker actually went there with Mike Huckabee. That was crazy.
Oh yeah, trust me, I have plenty to say about that. But no, we have this buildup of forces, and right now, as you mentioned, Trump's State of the Union is going on, and one of the going theories, which I'm more sympathetic to, whether it's a limited strike, whether it's a sustained campaign, or whatever, what we're looking at is it probably will be post State of the Union, and I did see some interesting figures from. There is an account on Twitter, Americanats. He does a lot of interesting
Oh yeah,
analysis.
that guy, he's pretty good.
And what's interesting is I'll screen cap his post and put it on here because he was doing some number crunching on the Iran versus the U.S. and Israel. So let me just go ahead and get this up here. But
what was the latest? I know, like, obviously, like, why, but like, what was the reason given for this build up against Iran currently? Were they was there
multifaceted, starting with the protest and then also claiming their missile stockpiles are too large, and then going into, of course, nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Too large for who?
Exactly.
Was it Witkoff that said that the Iranians are going to get a nuke in a week or so?
Oh yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, BB's
2 weeks
line.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
But
Yeah.
from this, what he has here is broad strokes about the strategic situation. The Iranian state survived 12-day war, recently survived a major regime change attempt with extensive domestic terrorism. Large-scale ground invasion of Iran isn't possible. The U.S. can bring several hundred standoff ammunition, primarily cruise missiles, to bear against Iran, and not much more. It's highly unlikely that several hundred standoff munitions could cause the Iranian state to collapse. If you don't find this case convincing, you should be able to articulate a list of targets the U.S. should hit with its limited standoff arsenal to trigger state collapse in Iran. That was part one, which I think was very solid analysis. And then he replied to his own post, quote tweeted, whatever, about statements from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, stating, I'll just read through this excerpt that he posted. As the Trump administration weighs an attack on Iran, the Pentagon's top general cautioned the president and other officials that shortfalls in critical munitions and a lack of support from allies will add significant risks to the operation and to U.S. personnel, according to people familiar with the internal discussion. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, expressed his concern at the White House in a meeting last week with Trump and his top aides. These people said, cautioning that any major operation against Iran will face challenges because U.S. munition stockpiles have been significantly depleted by Washington's ongoing defense of Israel and support for Ukraine. Kane's remarks came at the White House meeting, have not been previously reported. Continuing, taking on Iran's missile program would require hitting hundreds of targets across the country more than 3 times more than 3 times the size of Iraq. Those targets could include missile launch sites, many of them mobile, supply depots, air defense systems, transportation networks used to move these weapons. A former defense official told The Post, which is the publication that wrote this story. If the objective is to overthrow Iran's supreme leader, as Trump has mused publicly, the target would expand dramatically to thousands of sites, including command and control nodes, security services, and key buildings tied to Khomeini. Such a campaign would extend weeks or months and require more munitions and expose U.S. forces to more intense retaliation, former defense official said. Part 3 of 4. An attack on Iran would further strain U.S. relations with its regional allies. A senior Persian Gulf official told the Post that Arab countries have informed Washington they would not allow their bases to be used for a strike against Iran. Iran's threat to retaliate against any country that supports the U.S. operation has also raised questions about Washington's ability to secure flyover rights. One former Pentagon official said the lack of allied support significantly complicates the mission. Quote, how are we going to be able to do this, especially if the Arabs don't give us overflight, end quote. How are you going to hit hundreds, if not thousands, of targets across the country, the former official said. Last part here, munition stockpiles dropped so low last year that the Defense Department abruptly requested almost $30 billion in Congress to purchase a range of high-end missiles and interceptors. The request only partially fulfilled in the Pentagon's budget passed last month, according to lawmakers. Catherine Thompson, a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, funny enough they mentioned that, who released at the Pentagon, said the U.S. is not currently prepared to resource simultaneous conflicts, and any extended conflict with Iran would likely come with significant trade-off for higher priority interests, which means, to state the obvious, the U.S. cannot simultaneously deter China, attack Iran, and support Ukraine. One,
They would have
if
to
not
basically
more,
give
has
Russia whatever they want.
and they would probably even have to start snaking on China, which does lead, if you want to speculate, somewhat into the idea that the Japanese are going to try to amend their constitution in order to expand their military. I'm not saying I buy fully into that. I discussed this last episode. I don't think the Japanese, despite their anti-Chinese sentiments, are really willing to go fight and die for the Taiwanese just yet. That could happen. I'm not saying it's out of the possibility. But it would require American Navy's monomaniacal focus on Iran with its limited stockpiles. In which case, I will cite one of my favorite statistics I learned in the past year. The U.S. used up 3 to 8 years worth of munitions during the 12-day war to intercept Iranian missiles and drones over Israel. 3 to 8 years of stockpiles.
Oh, jeez. But what you just read, Constantine, is just incredible. Like, what happens when Iran actually decides to bomb an American base in Saudi Arabia for real?
Or
Instead of
worse
just,
yet,
like,
hit the oil
pretend-
fields and crash the global economy.
which they already have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's what I mean. What happens if, like, 1,000 American troops die in one strike? Then you'd have to have a ground war.
Now, I will
It would be,
I will
you know-
present a counter argument to that. I don't support it, but it is worth considering. In the 80s, when the Beirut barracks were attacked, Reagan, love him or hate him, did withdraw from Lebanon. Now, there
Yeah.
was still U.S. involvement in the region and in the Lebanese Civil War, don't get me wrong, but that level of losses all at once in the Middle East was not sustainable to the American public, and they had to at least publicly exit the theater.
And that was after the IDF were shooting at aid workers in Lebanon, if I recall.
Correct.
Which they always do. No,
And
but
keep in mind, Lebanon was about, I think, 280 U.S. casualties back in
Yeah.
the 1980s.
yeah. No, but the problem with this though is that I think maybe Iran would make a lot of people in Washington pretty, especially in the Pentagon, they would make them question what they're doing. But the problem with the neocons is that to give people a little history lesson, when it was during the Iraq War, there was a huge debate between who was the Asian general? Was it Pataki, or was it He wanted to implement basically the Bosnian model. in Iraq.
I know the guy you're talking about. I can't remember his name though.
Yeah, was it Pataki? But
Hey,
then
Hungarians, despite popular belief, are not Asian.
Yeah, not Pataki. It was let me look this. This is gonna drive me nuts.
Okay, we had the Uralic language discussion last episode,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I said I
Yeah.
give a pass to the Hungarians, but I'll never learn their language, and I don't want to relitigate that.
I'll never learn that language.
Finns and Estonians still out of the question.
Shinseki.
Okay.
Eric Shinseki. Shinseki wanted the Bosnian model, which is essentially 1 American troop for every 50 people in the country. That would require in Iraq about 300 to 400,000 American troops. Donald Rumsfeld said, "No, we're going to run this like a business. We're going to get Blackwater in there." Oh, I'm so Eric Prince though. He's like based, and he might be the president one day.
Well, hey, Eric Prince
based
said we
Eric
have to
Prince.
babysit Africa, therefore he's based.
Yeah, he's a man of history. So, but anyways, Eric Prince and Blackwater and Triple Canopy and Executive Outcomes, all these other. Well, I think Executive Outcomes was defunct at the time. But
Imagine what the Pentagon would have done with one Prigozhin.
Yeah, DynCorp. Yeah, DynCorp. We're gonna run Iraq like a business, right? Now, the thing is, American troops and special forces, they couldn't secure weapons caches that they gave to Saddam during the Iran-Iraq War. And so you have very pissed, and they fired through de-Baathification. They fired all of the Iraqi police and military. And so you have very pissed off.
They didn't even do that
very
in post-war
poor-
Germany, for context.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Very pissed off, very poor, and very motivated Iraqi men with military training now have access to American-grade weapons caches. And Rumsfeld only sent 100,000 troops in Iraq. So they didn't give a shit. They knew it was going to lead to American troop casualties, but they're like, "Oh, we're going to do it anyways."
Well, hold on, you're discounting something.
Right.
There were Polish troops, and Jan Sobieski himself led the charge.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So now imagine if you were to do the Bosnian model to Iran. What would that be like? What, 2 million American troops? 3 million? Right? Like it would be astronomical. It would be basically.
I think you need full mobilization from the reserves in order to meet that, assuming you didn't do a draft.
Exactly. And to which a lot of people within the Pentagon, there have been reports that the American military greatly overestimates its military readiness of each individual unit. And
Well,
can they field 1 million men?
I'm glad you're
I don't
bringing
know.
all this up because it's leading to one of my big concerns, and I've said this really ever since the show started, that even before a draft, which I don't want to see by any means, America's
That
more
means
likely.
you get drafted,
No,
Constantine.
America is more. No, I'm almost aged out of that. I'm not going to say, but I think I'd probably be aged out of it by the time any draft effort could be brought.
How'd they
It's a-
take you as a fighter pilot?
no, my eyes are too bad. Just simple civil aviation. But I don't know. They might put me on a cargo plane.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see what we can do. But
You'd be delivering the MREs to the. To
yeah,
the
I'm a
freedom fighters,
conscientious
yeah.
objector. I'm moving purely non-lethal aid. Okay, that's how it's gonna work. I can still probably do the show in the meantime, but I'm
Do you
getting
think
excited.
do you think the American military would still have the VOMLIT MRE?
I hope so.
so there's like a few freaks that actually did like the VOMLIT MRE.
But to
anyways.
get to my point, I think
Anyways.
before any of that is likely to happen, the Americans, or more likely the Israelis, would probably nuke Iran before a draft
Yeah,
could even
probably.
be
Yeah, there's
debated
always
in
that
Congress.
possibility.
There's always that possibility, right? Like every time America wants to deal with China, something happens in the Middle East, and this is another one, and I wonder what that's about. I think basically, Israeli interests, Jewish interests, Zionist interests in America are afraid that
Neoconservative interests, yeah.
they're them too, right? Is a host of groups who are probably not confident about what would happen in the Middle East, right? Again, it's overextension.
But something interesting I did see in terms of Middle Eastern allies and cooperation with an American war in Iran, not Israel, as a matter of fact, but Trump's kindred spirit in Ottomanism. He didn't say he would support it, and of course I'm referring to Erdogan, but he
Yeah.
said in the event of a regime collapse in Iran, he would be prepared to secure a buffer zone in Iran, which we could assume to mean the Azeri regions, in which case he wants Greater
yeah.
Azerbaijan, because that furthers his I guess you could say pan-Turkic vision. I'm not going to say that it's a purely ideological thing, but he wants that foothold in Central Asia. That's what this entire nonsense with Armenia and Azerbaijan has been about for several years now. And he wants that foothold. And sure, that risks creating a pain in the ass, much like Saddam later down the road. But I would say, given how duplicitous he is, given how much of a snake he is, they've secured the de facto cooperation of Erdogan, which is one of the key pieces, Turkey, if you're going to launch a regime change war against the Iranians. And the question is, can they bully the Gulf states into supporting this? I imagine they can. The Emiratis will. And the Qataris, like I said, all these people will eventually fold if it comes down to it. But I still do lean on the idea that American capabilities are not there for a sustained war in Iran. And that we're just going to keep kicking this can down the road. We're going to bomb more facilities. We're going to hit a few factories, hit a few warehouses, say we've knocked out the Iranian ballistic missile stockpiles, like how Trump did with Fordo, and say the Iranian missile program has been crippled for all time. And it's just going to be that song and dance back and forth as Israel gets increasingly more pissed, in which case that's when you really run the risk of Israel deploying the quite literally nuclear option.
Now,
Did you see the Mark Levin rant where he's like, if we don't do this now, then our future children will never forgive us for not taking out the Iranians. Oh god, there's Sam Harris. Did you see Sam Harris's bit? Where he's like,
I've
they
not
need
paid...
democracy. They would love us. They'd welcome as liberators.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, where have I heard that before?
Yeah. Every war, they'll welcome us as liberators. You know.
By the name of Moloch, we have to act now.
The Iranians, I'm sure they would love a secular liberal democracy, and I think it's a
yeah.
shame. That's what
You
he
know,
said.
Now, I have to tell you, about 8 days ago, I had lunch with a group of people, and 2 of them turned out to be well, one of them I knew was Iranian, and the other guy I honestly didn't. And so, you know, we started talking about politics, and and he said that he would like America to attack Iran and to overthrow the Ayatollah. And I said, "Help us, Peter Epstein, America. We need to be free." Like, I don't think he bargained how little shit I care about this stuff. Like, I don't care. Like, I get it. Now, he's not the. Now, I have another Iranian friend from like 92, 93. And like,
Okay,
they
old
literally
timer.
don't change. I understand. They were very, like, his parents were essentially atheists or agnostics, right? Middle class. These guys come in. Their whole world is upset. They leave. You know, it was a bloody time. I remember watching the fights, the hangings in the street. I'm not claiming there was any good guy or not, but I'm just saying.
Well, Saddam Hussein, he
Geopolitically-
was a good guy, but I digress.
So, I think, I said to one of them who, now the guy that I offended, I mean, he took it in good stride, but he was more offended than the other guy that I know well. And I said, "What do you think is going to happen? Like, what do you want from this? You think America's going to go in? They're going to bomb this place to smithereens? Maybe they'll bomb it for years. What do you think's going to happen? You think you're going to get your Iran back? The Iran that your parents lost, right? That Iran's never coming back.
Nope.
You're going to get balkanized. More than regime changed, you're going to get balkanized. That is the interim plan. Balkanize Iran first, right? Because like that during that 12-day war, the majority of the air defense systems that were neutralized, they were not neutralized by Israeli jets. They were neutralized by factions that had streamed over from Azerbaijan and other places, from Kurdish Iraq. Who did
Afghan
that?
refugees, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
Right.
who had been there since the 80s, and that's how they repay.
Since Iran, Iraq.
Yeah, that's how they repay the people they brought
They
in.
were working in conjunction with Indian call centers. No, I'm joking.
Imagine that.
Yes,
wouldn't
sir.
be surprised.
Yes, sir. We bomb now, sir.
Yes, yes, sir. Bob, that there's a S-300, sir. The one on the left, sir.
No wonder Modi
You
wants to
got it.
offload all
You
these
got it. That's
people.
the right one.
Holy fuck! We need this. We need the Indian call centers to
Yeah.
gay ops on different
And
countries.
Iran literally deported a million Indians after that happened.
What's your excuse, Mark Carney?
Yeah, what's your excuse?
When all the
Blump, what's
visas
your
expire.
excuse?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're not welcomed anymore. Anyways, like so, yeah, they don't take any chances like that. So I guess what I'm saying is Iran has already shown that there are weaknesses, right? That's why
Oh, definitely. The Iranian
that's
regime
why I
is
brought
weak,
up
yeah.
the Balkanization uh, model as what should come next, right? Because if they balkanize it, then that's the tie-in. Okay, we didn't get rid of the mullahs, but the mullahs have a lot less territory.
But
And
we
this
have
is
an
something-
independent Kurdistan. That's all that counts.
Right. And then they'll all the shit libs in the West and the right wingers in the West will
Oh, yeah.
agree that was a great thing. I kid you not. I think that's the strategy. So uh, I would say now Iran does not have a good leader at the moment. I'm not talking about the Ayatollah. I'm talking about Pezeshkian. He, to me, now we talked on the show back when he got in office that there was I can't get into it all over again now, but there was that intrigue about Raisi having a son that's a cleric, and he would come in to replace it. Okay, there could be more than one reason why this happened, but Pezeshkian is not a very strong leader for, I would say, Iranian interests.
And
Now,
he's not even Persian.
Yes, he's part Kurdish.
And part Azeri. He's a Kurd and Azeri.
Yes. Maybe some people thought that would be like a good thing to appease the Israelis and the Americans, but obviously, I'm not saying that's the case. But maybe some of them thought that was a good reason. I don't know. Maybe the other theory of secession of Ayatollahs and those being related to whatever current quote unquote secular leader there is. Maybe that's another aspect. But again, we touched on that show when Raisi and really like half his cabinet members were killed, including his foreign secretary. Right. So I would say not that things were great, not that Iran did things differently. Like, for instance, they're very hesitant on getting help from the Russians. And that didn't change with Pezeshkian. Part of that is, of course, the Russians or the Soviets occupied northern Iran during 1943, during the Second World War. And they were in there before that, before the Communist Revolution as well, right? So Iran and Russia were not on good terms. But let's say, for instance, we're talking about the Bazaris, the merchants in Tehran, which supported the Ayatollah in 1979.
It's okay, they're halal merchants.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that shorting of the dollar that the U.S. and the Jews in the U.S. boast about it, right? China asked them if they wanted to be credited, right? Like $100 million would have been enough to stabilize the situation or to reduce what had happened, right? And Pezeshkian refused. Now, Pezeshkian will be in office for
He
how
was
long? Almost 2 years, right?
Yeah, he was elected in 2024 after
June.
Yeah.
Was it June?
June 2024.
Yeah, June 2024, he's elected. And of course, the leader of Hamas is killed literally hours before he,
planning to
in the
attend his
early morning
inauguration.
hours.
In the lead up to his inauguration, he was supposed to
In the
be a
lead up to
guest.
his inauguration, right, the leader of Hamas is executed in Tehran, right? Like, that does not bode well for security, right? Now, no one's been caught. I'm not saying they have to be caught, but no one's been caught.
And this is why some people believe that Pezeshkian, in some ways, is a mole. He never now uh, now I don't. We know that doctors and scientists and generals and other high-ranking officers within the Iranian regime were killed, but he wasn't, and some other people close to him were not either. He's never visited China, right? When the what was it? The Shanghai Cooperation meeting took
Yeah, the
place.
SCO meeting.
The SCO was that not it? That was last year, right?
That
In
was
India.
last year, and that's the one he was significantly late to the point where he missed out on
Significantly
the
late,
group
missed out
photo
on
and
the
the
dinner, the photo op, right? He doesn't want to meet them. What is he doing? What is he signaling? Right? That's the part that scares me about the situation in Iran. Is him now? He's not the highest ranking. The Ayatollah is still the leader above him, but that doesn't mean he can't be taken advantage of. That doesn't mean there aren't other factions,
no, he's one of the most powerful
etc.
men in Iran.
Right. So that's the part that for me that I think about because the discussion has been basically, can they're not going to do another Maduro. They can't do another Maduro.
No.
Iran is not Venezuela. Like, be serious. Um, they'll, these guys would die. They have like dozens of them have been killed, and there's always a new guy waiting in line. They're not the same people.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's I. What I think is interesting about a couple points is number one, if they had the ability just to abduct the Iranian leadership, they would have done that years ago.
Yeah.
The reason Iran has not undergone regime change is because of practical limitation, not any lack of will. That's number one. Number two, I remember last summer the interview with Pezeshkian that Tucker Carlson did, and my impression at the time, and I stick by it, is that he is a fundamentally weak man. He's a man who has no business in high office in the best of times, even when things are peaceful and prosperous. This
Yeah.
there's nothing to this
Yeah.
man, and yeah, I would tend to agree that he is probably a mole. He's probably compromised, and uh, they would probably love to have him as the succession of leadership. And to go back to your
He's
point
no
about
Ahmadinejad.
exactly,
Yeah,
And-
you took the words right out of my mouth.
and to
Exactly
go
what I was
back
thinking.
to the decapitation strikes, so-called decapitation strikes, those actually backfire in Israel because what they did is they liquidated a bunch of old, hesitant officers and
Yeah.
replaced them with their juniors who were much more younger, who were much more hard line. Talking about guys in their 40s, 50s, maybe even like early 60s in some
They
cases.
eugenicized the Iranian leadership.
Who
Holy
Whereas these guys, these Iran
Thank
Iraq
you
War
for doing
veterans are
our
like,
work.
oh, maybe we need some restraint. And then his lieutenant, who assumes command after he gets offed, is like, barrage Israel, launch everything we have. And I fear, I do fear in a way, in terms of escalation, that if something were to happen to the highest echelons of Iranian leadership, now maybe the country couldn't survive the symbolic loss of somebody like the Ayatollah, perhaps
Right.
that would embolden them. But assuming it would embolden them, do you think they're going to that they're going to choose a guy who has a fatwa against nuclear weapons next time? No, and I would actually argue, purely from the perspective of the Iranian state, that its leadership is ossified. It is old. It
Oh,
is out
yeah.
of touch. And I'm not saying this to peddle like some boogeyman narrative, but I don't think, regardless of one's opinion on him, I don't think Khomeini has a grasp on the situation. Now, from what I understand, is that he did a lot of command and control during the 12-day war, so he showed that he has some instinct, but I mean, how much of that was his advisors just getting a green light in order to do what they need to do? But I think the biggest weakness of the Iranian leadership right now is at the highest levels, it's the supreme leader, ossified, and then on the lower levels, at the presidential level, they have a fundamentally weak man who is possibly a foreign asset.
Yeah, I guess I completely agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad because you've added new context to what I was saying. Um, just briefly, I want to talk about what is China and Russia, you know, doing right now to support them. I mean, obviously, we don't know everything that they're doing, but Russia recently. So, I mean, one of the big hurdles that the 12-day war convinced the Iranians was to finally settle on buying the Russian jets, the Su-35s. Not that they would be great, but they would just be a deterrent, right? Because they simply don't have the numbers. Now, the Russians are also giving them the Mi-28 helicopters and man pads. Of course, um, after the failed coup in January with all the protesters, there's indications that the Russians helped them in descrambling um, all the Starlink
Yeah,
uh,
Starlink.
uh, pods that were given to all the various groups, particularly the Kurds. Again, right? The Kurds are like they're living in this. I mean, really, the only people I can compare them to is the Iranians. Like they believe that if they keep following and doing what America wants and what Israel wants, they'll get their Kurdistan. Eventually, they'll be rewarded with their Kurdistan country. Um,
Oh, you mean they're like the Ukrainians?
yeah, in that
Yeah,
regard, right?
yeah.
Like just fight for them to the bitter end. If the Kurds can fight for them for 50 years, so can you.
Well, that
Yeah,
brings up,
what's your excuse, Azov?
that
Yeah.
that brings up the question: who is the Kurdish Arestovich? There's got to be one.
Yeah.
Who is the man who can just blackpill the Kurds into oblivion? Who's one of their
Now,
own?
the Chinese are supplying the Iranians with real-time satellite imagery of all the bases that the Americans are at right now. I mean, so are Americans on on Twitter, but that's
Wait,
neither
who is
here
the
nor there.
Iranian? Who, was gonna say, who is the Iranian Gherkin?
Gherkin, yeah.
That's a good
Well,
question.
they killed him. That's Suleiman.
Oh, there you go. So they-
Stupid blum.
yeah.
No, but in hindsight, especially, I think the Soleimani assassination is because they did fear him obtaining more political power, not just military power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was like Ahmadinejad on steroids. That's like
And he was competent and young enough to really follow through with it.
Yeah, and he had a
Yeah.
lot of like even the less, I suppose, more secular elements of Iranian society that weren't subversive. A lot of them viewed him as a nationalist figure, and
yes, they did. And he had charisma,
Yep.
good looking. So, I mean, he was.
Yeah, no,
compared to
No, he
Ahmadinejad-
was like a secular leader, but he wasn't like a libtard secular Iranian
yeah,
leader.
like
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the bitches were crazy about him. Can I say that on air?
we're like
No,
2
but
hours
you
in.
know what I
We're
mean,
we're
because
past the threshold.
Those things that go a long way in political life. So
No, but that's the thing, though. You mentioned about the left and the right in North America and Europe. Like, it seems to be, again, I was watching this video by Interesting Books Review, and he talked about, like, Schrodinger's Epstein or Schrodinger's Russia. And it's the same template. Like, Schrodinger's Russia is like, if you're on the political left, it's like Russia's the funder of global fascism. Russia's Duganite. Russia's like
They're
you
like
know,
Israel. They massacre Muslims in Chechnya
exactly.
and Syria.
They're like the Israelis. They're massacring people. The wholesome Chungus, freedom-loving, democracy-loving Ukrainians. But if you so that's like the political left. Like they're the funder of global fascism, and all the right wing is Russia, Russia, Russia. But if you're on the political right, it's the message of like Russia's this mongrel third worldist going against the based European Ukrainians, Jupiterian, and like you have to fight the mongrel hordes.
They're somehow
and
responsible for the migrant crisis.
They're responsible for the migrant crisis, and also they're against the Mother Europa. That's like the right wing gladio nationalism, right? The left gladioism is like this, the same but different. Schrodinger's Iran is for the left, the gladio left. They're like these, sexy mena baddies with OF accounts. It's feminist. They do like, they do feminism better than like white women in the West. and it's like, the Kurds are wholesome Chungus, and the Iranians are this oppressive theocracy, blah blah blah. The Gladio right is obvious with Iran. Schrodinger's Iran. It's like, they're like third world browns, and they hate America and freedom, and they chant death to America, and also, they hate the based Likudniks
And
Israel.
somehow they support the cartels. That's the new narrative they're
Yeah,
spinning with the
somehow,
violence in
yeah.
Mexico.
So it's like Schrodinger's Russia is like Schrodinger's Iran. And that's the way that
Yeah.
intelligence operations, that's how they get support from both the left and the right in North America and Europe. And so you mentioned your friend GSP, that it was Iranian.
Yep.
The thing is, though, a lot of Iranians that have immigrated to the West, obviously they hate the Ayatollahs. And a lot of them tend to be leftists and they're secular, blah, blah, blah. But the untold human misery and death that will be felled upon the Iranian people, it wouldn't be like America goes in there as liberators, and then fucking, what's his name, the descendant of the Shah, gets in power, and you have MENA baddies with OF accounts, and you have democracy, blah, blah, blah. You know what Iran would look like after a brutal and bloody war with the
Yeah.
West? It would look like Libya. How you can buy a slave in Libya for like $5 American. You would be able to buy a slave in Iran for $5 American. That's what Iran would look like after a full-scale war.
Well,
wouldn't
this
be-
is one of the reasons why they're
Yeah.
quiet sometimes, right? Like the second Iranian guy that I was talking to, he says, "Okay, you know what? I get it. I agree with you. We're making a pact with the devil.
Right.
I get
No,
it.
but that's what I mean. It wouldn't be
I
like this
understand that, and-
liberation.
I understand that, and that's what frustrates one of my Ukrainian friends. He's now aware that Jeffrey Epstein took dozens of Ukrainian girls, many of them underage,
Yeah.
and raped them, and gave them to other men.
No, but this is what happens to every war-torn country with a lot of beautiful women. Is that, and young children? Is that, like, look what happened with Libya. Look what happened with Bosnia. Look what's happening with Ukraine. I mean, even Ukraine in the 1990s. Like, look at what happened.
Syria
with
under Jolani. Look at
Syria under Jelani.
the first months of Jelani's reign was just complete
Butchering
massacres,
people.
butchery, slavery, all of it.
Yeah.
But what I do think
And
is
I
interesting.
imagine there's a sex trade out of Syria as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You
But
know?
what I
Yeah.
thought was interesting about you bringing up the question of the libtarded diaspora is we actually saw something interesting during the 12-Day War, where the most fervent anti-regime types were like, okay, I hate the regime, whatever, but Israel is just they're bombing our people, they're massacring them. They have no regard for us. The so-called liberators that Netanyahu has promised us are indiscriminately bombing Iran, trying to taking out entire apartment blocks, trying to assassinate one man. And a lot of them were embittered by that. Now, as soon as the protests started, they snapped right back into place. But what's interesting is when you see that serious application of force, a lot of them didn't have the stomach for it, understandably so.
Yeah. Well, because Western leftists are stupid. They're hypocrites. They're
Yeah.
evil. They will talk about Gaza, but they'll support any action against Iran because of the protesters. Don't you think those people that are protesting, they're also going to get massacred? Because what, you think bombs are so smart and sophisticated that they're not going to target ordinary Iranians?
Look,
Like, it's
Israel
fucking stupid.
is evil in Gaza and it shows no regard for civilian casualties.
Yeah.
But
But
when
they're
they hit
based when it comes to Iran.
But when they
and
hit
Syria.
Iranian targets, they want to be liberators, okay? Because Cyrus the Great or whatever.
Wingers, at least like the dissident right in the West, at least they're like, oh, fuck them. They're all brown people. Fuck them. At least it's more morally consistent
Yeah,
than what the Western left is doing with Iran. So, like, it's not to say I condone it either.
no,
but, like,
no.
it's
But it's more
just-
duplicitous as far as the left is concerned because the right, they're just playing on the Crusader
Based
imagery
America,
or the
yeah,
the,
Crusader,
colonial empires and trying to make them think, oh, we're doing this for your benefit. It's going to be cool.
I'm
It's going to be based, and
I'm just like Rudyard Kipling. I'm just like Kipling.
yeah, like it's
based.
it's
Yeah.
just that they want to make you think like, oh, it's for you. Where's the left? It's completely duplicitous because they're selling you one narrative and then blatantly blatantly giving you the opposite. Whereas at least like with the right,
I believe
it's a much easier sell with the right wing.
it's easier so.
Yeah, because
it's sort of, I forget who said this on Twitter, said that like a lot of like conservatives in America, like if they let them say gamer words, they would be like the USS Nathan Bedford total you know what death unit invading Iran. It's
well,
it's like that's more morally consistent than
in,
like
in
the
all
Western
in all
left.
seriousness,
Yeah.
I mean, they renamed it Fort Bragg. They're bringing back all the Confederate nostalgia, and like, I mean, what on a personal level,
Yeah.
I don't care. I think the South has a right to their heroes. What I'm not
No,
a
that's what I
Southerner,
mean.
whatever.
I'm
But
not
point being,
denigrating
but
the
point
South.
being
I'm just
is
saying that they're using it
no,
as a way of
I'm backing you up here. Point being is they will allow this regime to skin suit their identity, to skin suit everything they care about in
Yeah.
service of something that is ultimately to their destruction.
But you have to die in Iran.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
That's the trade-off. And also, one last thing I'll bring up is the whole Israel question, where the left and the right also converge in the idea that Israel is a European settler colonial state, but it's a good thing if you're right wing, it's a bad thing if you're left wing.
Exactly. It's like settler colonialism is good as long as the left is in power, as long as the Democrat, like Obama type figure, is doing it, and then it's good. Or if it's the Kurds doing it as a proxy, like all the parapolitics. Like here's what the CIA did with the proxy wars in Latin America and Africa. It's like that's good as long as a leftist is doing it. Like you know what I mean? Like at least with the political right, you could say like, yeah, they're being pawns and they're ginning up war with Iran, but in their worldview, it's like, well, it's good to exercise power. But when it comes to like Western leftists going along with like even like a blatantly, neocon Israeli agenda in Iran, it's just why? Because of like meta baddies? Like it's fucking stupid. Like it's you know what I mean? Like so, but the point being is that my position, I feel that there are people in the Trump administration who are looking at the actual facts of it. They're like, well, we can't do this. This is impossible.
Particularly the Pentagon.
Exactly, particularly the Pentagon.
And you'll
They're
notice
like,
JD Vance
yeah.
is covering his ass. Not that I think he has some sort of like great principal disagreement with it, but he's looking at 2028 and thinking, look, if Trump sticks this war on me, I'm gonna lose.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think he knows that.
Yeah.
And
so it's in his direct interest to make sure everything is stable, whether that is not only foreign policy, but stuff from the tariffs, where JD Vance needs to be the status quo guy. He needs to make sure everything is just bearable enough so he can get elected in 2028. And to a lesser extent, I would say Rubio is on that same thing. Now, I think Rubio is a bit more gung-ho about, say, regime change in Iran or whatever. But point being is all of the presidential hopefuls on the Republican side need to just keep things at bay. They can do this in 2029. They just need to make sure that Gavin Newsom doesn't win, because their careers are over if that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And then who knows if there will be like a leftist justification for going after Iran as well.
Oh, of course there
So,
will. American psycho Newsom, of course he would find a justification for bombing Iran.
Yeah. My hope would be that the Republicans, like people like JD Vance, I know this might sound like hope. I know I'm being incredibly harsh on Trump, but like my hope would be that a lot of the more saner people within the administration, they can hold things off long enough for all of the old neocons to retire and die.
Like I said, I don't care if they
age.
agree with us or not, but even if just to cover their own asses, our interests are aligned here, and that's all I need.
Right. Like people like Lindsey Graham, they basically have to just become so old and decrepit, or basically just get pillowed of old age to you know what I mean? Like I think like people like JD Vance, they realize like, yeah, like no one's gonna buy it in the future. It's just you can't really sell. Like, in the absence of the boomer world order, you can't really sell a war with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, who remembers the hostage crisis? What age demographics are we talking about? And that was the justification for years.
Yeah, the only way you could really sell it is in the package of, like, gladio leftism. Like, all the, like, neocon bullshit with Israel, like, that's not gonna fly. But to sell it as, like, we're liberating people for, like, Western democracy, and so they can have OnlyFans and abortion, maybe that might sell it.
Or here's an unpleasant thought: a false flag somewhere, either in Europe or North America.
Oh, that's something I haven't Oh, I can't even think about that. That'd be like.
But the question
oh my
is, like, do
God.
they have the narrative coherence to make a false flag land? Like,
Well, because here's the thing. I think in the age of social media, it would have to be like it would have to be bigger than 9/11. It would have to be something that would shock the world, even more than 9/11 shocked the world. It would have to be something very big.
in a world that's very desensitized now, so that's a
Yeah.
tall order.
You would have a significant faction
And
of people.
suspicious. And very
Ye-
suspicious.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there was a communique between Ghislaine Maxwell. This is part of the Epstein files.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know the one.
And who was it? He asked her. He asked her. So where's the real pilot?
Whoa.
This was on the 18th of September, so just a week after. Where is the real pilot?
Oh, I thought the one where Jelaine, she like wanted a war with Iran. There was another one with that. Yeah.
I mean, they all kind of do, right? Because
Yeah.
no matter, this is the thing that I find so funny. No matter how, yes, it was from Philip Levine. Where is the real pilot? Tuesday the 18th of September 2001. I mean, these people don't care. They don't care what kind of tricks they do to get what they want.
Just in the minutes I've been thinking about this, you know, a false flag that probably would work. A nuke. They could say Iran nuked Israel or Iran nuked whatever, because they're
Yeah.
2 weeks away from the bomb, and you have a nuclear explosion somewhere in the world. Iran's responsible, and then that gives us license to retaliate with nukes.
And then the world as we know it would end.
And I don't know, look at the personal emails of these people. They probably take great pleasure in that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would think more likely it would be that there's a suspected, I don't know, an American ship. Now, the ships, let's be clear, the ships are not at the Strait of Hormuz right now. They're more towards the Indian Ocean. They're much further
Outside of
out.
missile range, for context.
Outside of missile range, yes. But if a jet was downed, you know,
Yeah.
maybe that would be enough for cause for escalation. Because because the calculus that we have right now is if America doesn't act, it will look weak, right? Kind of like Ukraine. If we don't keep sponsoring Ukraine, if we don't keep sending it aid, we're going to look weak and defeated. And this is only going to get escalated if, like, and they take out one of your jets, and you don't get what you want. That's why I think they are going to go for a kind of a balkanization, and then that will. Now, is there enough? I don't know. I don't think so. But it doesn't mean they won't try it. And how sustained will this have to be? Because as now, China has stepped up. They are giving Iran more aid, and Iran, I think, now knows they're in a kind of a position that Vietnam was in, and that is, so some of your executive decisions you're going to have to consult with us. Like China does not have the reach to go into Iran and help defend it,
Like
right?
they did with Vietnam, yeah.
Right. And the Russians are preoccupied in the bloodiest war since World War II. So they're limited. They had to make a decision whether, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think Putin didn't go into Syria, is because right away, like in 2011, maybe he was afraid of what was happening in Ukraine. But he's always underestimated the severity of Ukraine. His calculus has always been wrong. He's always, he too, I think, is trying to please parties in opposition with one another. In any case, he has a war and an economy that he has to manage, with no less than 28 countries participating. And now we have news that even some of the F-16 pilots are actually Europeans. They're not Ukrainians.
which
Of course.
anyone could have seen coming.
Yes, right. So
We said this exact thing would happen. Retired volunteers would form
yes,
up the Ukrainian Air Force.
right. And so um, I would say that if the war is another 2-week event, they won't step in. But if it drags on for a month, and by stepping in, I don't mean they're going to send troops and whatnot, but they will increase the amount of help. But it's the onus is really more on China than on Russia. For one, China has a population 10 times the size of Russia. China's not in a war, but China is very adverse to war. So China will have to find some kind of means of helping Iran, because you, I mean, it will, like,
Maybe they'll send
90% of Iranian crew. What's that?
Maybe they'll send North Koreans to the meat grinder.
Oh God! Like 90% of Iran's exports of oil go to China, right? China has a vested interest in protecting that. Russia has a vested interest in geopolitical positioning in Central Asia, to make sure that, as people refer to, the soft underbelly of Russia, right? Iran is fortunate in that, except for maybe the Kurdish population and the Baluchis or whatever, uh, the Baluchis are more insignificant. It's on good relations with Afghanistan. It's generally in good relations with Turkmenistan and some of the other Central Asian states. Iraq is, by not a great margin, is still majority Shia. They've said that they are going to help Iran, and they have their own, deep underground bases. I don't think they're sophisticated. So I would say that that's one of the things that is in Iran's favor right now, is that it doesn't have hostile neighbors. I mean, Bahrain,
Well, it's got a
Saudi
really
Arabia,
big one.
they're hesitant about this. They're not sure what's going to happen to them if Iran falls.
And all that being said, if American focus is shifted primarily to Iran, we could see a scenario where the front line in Ukraine intensifies. And we could also alternatively see a scenario. I'm not saying China would invade Taiwan, but China could be much more aggressive in its own backyard. It could start making more harsh demands of the Taiwanese, of the Vietnamese, of this little ring of countries that we've built to encircle China. I'm not saying there would be a hot war, but they would be able to maybe lean on them a little more than they could if a more significant American Navy presence was in the region.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if there's any unilateral action with Iran, it's pretty obvious that America would have to abandon any encirclement of China, and they'd have to basically just give Putin whatever he wants in Ukraine. Like, that's the only option.
Which, interestingly enough, we're seeing the internal debate in the West play out because Starmer denied Diego Garcia for use in an Iran operation. And one could assume, I mean, aside from the whole Chagos Island debate, the UK trying to get rid of them, one could assume is he knows exactly that. He knows what fading interest the Americans have in the Ukraine war would completely dissipate, which, of course, the British are very invested in the Ukraine war, in the event of an escalation with Iran.
Yeah.
So, while I would say all the quote-unquote right people would like escalation with Iran, in terms of capacity, they simply have no more than the ability than to do another quote-unquote punitive strike similar to what they did last summer.
Yeah.
And look, I could be proven wrong. I hope I'm not wrong in that case. Some people might say this, that you're being too optimistic, this is cope, whatever. But I'll repeat myself earlier. I think if they had the capability to collapse Iran, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. No, but another thing too is that people are talking about, well, if Trump's talking a lot about Iran, he has to do something. That's the one, I think, benefit of Trump being kind of like a showman and a shyster is that how many examples of the past 10 years do we have of Trump like speaking a lot about something but then walking it back like it didn't ever happen to the next day?
I mean, that
Mhm.
was liberals' favorite joke during the tariff thing.
Yeah.
Taco, Trump always chickens out. And
Yeah,
there's a
that's-
kernel of
yeah.
truth to that. And where
Oh, yeah.
Trump can bloviate, and at that point he can do another Fordo strike or something like that and say, we've crippled the Iranian ballistic missile program. Our work here is done. And then Netanyahu
that's-
can get on the
yeah.
phone and he can go to Washington. He can kvetch all day, and Trump can. And once again, we can rinse and repeat this cycle where, yeah, and I agree. Trump. The benefit of Trump's personality is that he can shift quickly, and that he
Yeah.
can. He's. I'm not gonna say he's good at controlling the narrative because that's not true, but he's good at throwing a wrench in it, for better or for worse.
And he's good at like he'll do is he suddenly rediscovers what his base elected him for.
Yeah, he'll
He'll be
start
like,
throwing out some red meat somewhere.
Yeah, he'll be like, well, I guess I am the anti-war president, so I guess maybe we shouldn't invade Iran. And it's like then he'll like walk it back, and then there'll be
Or he could pull
controversy,
more ICE antics, and like I said,
Yeah.
I hope that would result in significant deportations. I hope he would do something he promised, but at the very least, he could deal with riots in whatever blue state is the target that time, and
Yeah.
he could say it's strong law and order before quietly returning to the status quo, like he did in Minnesota, like he did in California to an extent, and he can shift attention that way. Because, like I said, I think the buildup necessitates some military action, but I am hard pressed to believe it would be sustained military action.
No. I mean, hopefully we could be wrong.
No, we could be wrong, but in that case, if they're committing to sustained military action, the American empire is putting all its eggs in one basket, that being Iran, thinking that they can get the trifecta, they can keep the Israelis happy, they can have Russia's southern flank, and that they can put Chinese energy interests in a much more precarious state. In which case,
Yeah.
if they decide they're going to do the triad, the triple crown, whatever you want to call it, they're going to dedicate every available resource they have that they can spare.
Which is suicide.
Oh, absolutely. It would
It's
be
imperial suicide, really.
that would be the last gasp of the American empire. And I'm not saying that would lead to like a Soviet style collapse at home. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of America's global power projection, it would be permanently crippled if they were to do that.
And there would be like a massive. It kind of would be like the end of the Soviet Union. There would be like a massive
Externally.
enshittification of life. Yeah.
I don't think there would be like any sort of secessionism or breakup in the United States.
No.
I could be wrong, but I don't foresee that. But in terms of America's global reach, it would be on the level of 1989 for the Soviet Union.
Oh, there definitely would be an economic depression.
Oh yeah.
That there definitely would be pain towards the American people. That's what I mean. Like maybe it's just I'm idealistic and I'm not. I understand why the way things are, why they are. Like I understand the motivations of people in power why they do this, but in terms of just real human cost, when people say like, okay, Washington, they have to pick one, China, Russia, or Iran. It's like dedicate your resource to one. You can't have them all, but you can have one. But you can't even have one. But still.
Yeah, I would agree.
Why pick any of them? Why pick it? Like, why does America need to perpetually be in a war all the time? Now, I understand the imperial reasons why. I understand the logic of power and the global stage and power politics. But in terms of just the logic of the limitations to the way things are, the way that the resources have been structured, the way that global power operates, I don't see any war with another great power that would be purely in the benefit of the American empire.
Oh, I completely agree.
Especially China. That's unthinkable.
And
yeah.
With all that being said, as somebody who is a pretty outspoken pessimist on most situations, I'm not going to do the opposite of the delusional white pillars and concoct the worst possible scenario I can think of, and that must be true because it's the worst possible scenario I can think of. I need to balance even my pessimism with a realistic assertion of the situation, and if that sounds optimistic sometimes, That is the honest conclusion I'm coming to. I'm not trying to paint my narrative one way or another. And in fact, I'm actually fighting a lot of my initial instinct thinking about the worst case scenario to try to come to a much more grounded position, in which case I would say that to return to just simple constraints on the ground, material reality, it's just not there. And that they're going to keep kicking these can down the road. But also, it's going to be the worst of both worlds because there's not going to be any sort of meaningful imperial retreat where we simply become another great power and are able to safeguard the interest of an actual American nation. We're not going to go, the example I've invoked before, we're not going to go the Ataturk route where perhaps we trim some fat off of this system and in order to preserve it. But we're also not going to go, at least in my assessment, all in on any of the great imperial prizes, in which case we would need to if we're to preserve the hegemonic world order that we built, because there's simply too many rivals at this point. So we're not going to put in a reverse gear. We're not going to floor it. We're just sitting here in neutral, seeing which way it tips.
Well, that's something that Stormy actually said. Stormy Waters. He said, like, okay, the thing is, America, like under Trump, but even before Trump, there was always this incentive to get out of NATO and to sort of like get out of the engagement of NATO. And part of like the Greenland thing is to shore up their like the massive global trade route that's in that part of the world. But the thing is, there's always things that pull them to like either the Europeans or the Israelis. They're always like deathly afraid of America losing interest in them. And so you have like the Gaza thing, you have Iran and the Middle East, and then also you have Ukraine. And they're being pushed and pulled in every direction, right? So the one logic of the American empire is that there needs to be a great retraction to save the nation. This is what a lot of people that are like in the MAGA camp, that's what they wanted Trump to do. They wanted Trump to be like a sort of Caesar Augustus type of figure. And they wanted a retraction, but to shore up like sort of like steal like the greater Americas as the sphere of influence among many.
Well, like I
right?
said, it's a crude comparison, but I call it the Ataturk model.
The Ataturk, exactly, the Sultan Donald model. But the thing is, though, Trump only has maybe 3 years. If the midterms don't go his way, he's got less than that.
Yeah, and statistically, just
Right.
opposition party usually wins the midterms, even under the best of circumstances.
Right. But in 2028, now under Biden, and this is what Stormy was saying, under Biden, like, you know, Biden was sort of like the fucking NATO-tard president with Ukraine. And he was like he was sort of like what I'd imagine Gavin Newsom wants to be, which is like a Macron on steroids. Like the rules-based order is going to be like dark woke. We're going to like do imperialism, but from the left.
Atlanticism for the 21st century.
Yeah, exactly. Like like Richard Spencerite Atlanticism, but more anti-white, obviously. So, you know, yeah, because you're really going to get Atlanticism that's not, you know, what you're really going to get the Jupiterian Atlanticism, Richard.
Yeah, we can look at all the Croatians and the Bosnians that were tried in the International Criminal Court after dutifully doing their duty to the American Empire. And I'm sure the Azov guys are going to be the exception. They're not going to end up like the Croats. They're not going to end up like the Bosnians, who suffered the same fate as their Serbian rivals. Funny enough.
You know what Barack Obama said on Twitter?
Go on.
You know what regime was very pro-Israel back in the day?
What's that? Oh, Rhodesia?
South Africa. Yeah, and Rhodesia.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so there you go. You know, yeah. So
there's your reward for your undying loyalty to the sacred cows. There it is. South Africa, you get to be a testing ground for Israel's nuclear weapons, and then when push comes to shove, when you need outside support the most, they're gonna kind of give it to you, but then slowly but surely cut you off.
So so the whole thing about you know, based Atlanticism is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard in my life.
But what about the Macron vaporwave edits?
But the point being, though, is that if you do get someone like a Newsom, a Democrat in 28, my fear would be that they would have to double down on the sort of like base NATO wave, Atlanticist, Jupiterian, whatever. Like, we're going to do globalism right. We're gonna do it correct. We're not gonna half-ass globalism, right? So there would be an incentive to be like, we're gonna dark woke Iran. We're gonna send Brace Belden again from TrueAnon to support the Kurds, and we're gonna have like porno parties with men of baddies from Iran, and we're gonna have Vice magazine hipsters again going to Tehran.
We're gonna have
and
army
we're gonna
recruiters
have-
visiting Antifa, and they're all gonna sign
Yeah.
up because it's the thing to do.
Yeah, Antifa, Gladio left, like the Gladio left. We're gonna have the Gladio left Atlanticism, globalism done right.
Who's that
That's
one?
my theory.
Who's that Navy SEAL who, let's just say, underwent the transition surgery? It's gonna be that.
Oh, fuck. That person's been so irrelevant. in
Yeah, but like
2025.
that's gonna be the model.
Yeah.
Like these are the,
Yeah, it's
that's
gonna
gonna
be
be
the
the
model,
guy who's running the military recruitment campaigns. He's gonna be putting out the ads for the army and the navy, where he's gonna be like, well, the American military is the world's leading force of left wing values and progressivism and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the sad part is you're gonna have plenty of right wingers who still feel an instinctual loyalty to their nation, understandably so. Once again, it's
Right,
there,
right.
especially from like the old colonial stock, like the Anglo-Scots-Irish people who still exist in America, and they're gonna think, oh, I don't like the current administration. It might be bad, but I gotta have to do my duty to my country, etc., etc. And they're going to
Right.
once again become the attack dogs of a system that hates them.
But I think a lot of them would realize
I hope so,
that
but
they're like, if Gavin Newsom's sending them to Iran, it's not good. But then again, I mean, there's one particular influencer that talks about Russia a lot now. No, but the point being is that there would, like, I think under a leftist administration, there would be a revival of interventionist globalism in this sort of Anglosphere, and that's my big fear.
oh
and
yeah.
I think that, yeah,
The only reason we didn't see more of that under Biden is because Biden
Well, he was
was senile. It's just that simple. It's if Biden were 20 years younger, I mean, go back to his speeches in Congress during the Yugoslav wars. Listen to the way he talked about Europeans. Like it's
Yeah,
far more
yeah.
anti-white than anything anyone out of Russia has ever said.
right.
Like
But then you'd have people like Richard Hanani and Richard Spencer that would say like, "Wow, this is the most based, pro-European, pro-civility, like European values administration ever." And it's like,
yeah, well, Macron is
You know-
plundering your pension and giving it to Algerians. You need to
'Cause
go
the thing
fight
is,
in
it
Ukraine.
didn't-
You need to go fight in Iran.
the thing is, it didn't really work with Obama for obvious reasons. He pushed too far with like the sort of the leftist coalition that would form in the 2010s. He pushed too hard in that direction.
Well, with
Whereas someone
Obama,
like
the
Newsom-
problem is they overestimate the power of appeal to cool. Nah.
Yeah. They like they underestimated, like they overestimated the cultural cachet of the foundational Black American.
Yeah, especially when
experience.
they had to put up a half Kenyan. It's like not even like, oh, he's from Chicago, but he's not from Chicago. Like they
Right,
couldn't find they couldn't find an actual Black American who was as well spoken as Obama to peddle the same points. They had to find a guy named Barack Obama, not look, I know I
there,
get
there
slandered,
would have been
but
some,
all
but
the
they wouldn't have been
names,
able to control them. Yeah.
one of the FBA names, you know the type. So that sounds like an aristocratic English name, but some guy from the south side of Chicago or St. Louis. Let me just put it that way.
I mean, you had black leaders, but they just wouldn't have been palatable.
You know what? They
to
should
the
have
way that
should have gone
in
with Cory
terms of,
Booker.
like- yeah. No, but you would have like you would have like sophisticated black leaders, but they would have politics that would piss off a lot of people in power, and so they, like, Obama was like their perfect neoliberal stooge.
Yeah,
like he
yeah,
was.
they found
you
the
know,
half
so-
Kenyan guy raised in Indonesia.
Yeah, and so Gavin Newsom or someone his equivalent, I think, would rein in a lot of like the white leftists to perform a Gladio law.
And think
That would
about
be
who
my
they
fear.
could put on the bottom of the ticket for Newsom. Think about how many terrible options there are that they could use
Oh,
to short. They
God.
could do an AOC. They could do an Hakeem Jeffries. They could do any one of these
Yeah.
people. Whatever group they need to appeal to at the time. They can put maybe even Kamala will resume her role as
Some
vice
people were
president.
speculating. Some people were speculating with the Bad Bunny Super Bowl that they're going to pivot to Hispanics in America. Like they're finally going to like let him in. You know what I mean? Like they're going to embrace
Oh, so
The
the
Hispanic
so the
undercurrent,
left is
yeah.
now doing Castizo futurism. I thought that was our thing.
Yeah, it would be like Castizo futurism done left. That's
Yeah,
basically what
so
people were
Mustizo
saying. Yeah.
futurism.
No, but and I think like with 2028, the Democrats have a lot of options. I hate to say this, I don't mean to blackpill, but like
No,
well,
they
maybe I
do. The Republicans are going in, and who are our two Republican candidates? It's either going to be Vance, it's going to be Rubio. Those,
Yeah.
and I'm not. I not particularly like either of them, nor am I optimistic about their chances for winning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the problem is that the Republicans, they do have a lot of baggage that have been built up from the Trump years. And I think that even people that are influencers in the political right that talk about we're going to change the culture have not really done a lot to change the culture. And like, in some sense, yes, with meme culture, I don't want to like completely backpill. There has been a lot of changes, but I think in terms of foundational, institutional cultural change rather than online cultural change,
Yeah, yeah.
that has yet to be seen. There's been more talk about this. So like recently, notice how I did not weigh in on this a month ago when people were talking about the fucking right wing art thing again.
I think
know,
the show
like-
is right wing art.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I did not weigh into it a lot because it's stupid. It's stupid. These people are not artists. They don't care. They want to talk about it, but not really do anything about it. And so the conversation comes up again and again and again, and it'll be coming up again and again and again for the next 3 years without actually building cultural institutions that are fundamentally right wing in America or elsewhere.
Hey, but the Daily Wire has a production
Yeah,
studio. They can
got lady
they can save the
ballers.
culture.
Yeah, or like people were like, and listen, I don't mean to call out because some of them are my friends, like Ways watching Spirals, but they're like, well, you know, just like you gotta trust the Christopher Nolan plan. Christopher Nolan's gonna deliver. And you look
Christopher
at the Odyssey,
Nolan.
and you look at the Odyssey, and it's like, what plan is there to trust? What plan?
What, you mean those weren't Greeks?
Yeah, you can't. You're not gonna do a reverse discourse on this piece of shit. I'm sorry. You're not gonna do the right wing aesthetic truth reverse discourse on the fucking Odyssey film. I'm sorry. Okay? It's not gonna happen. I'm sorry, Ways. I love you, big guy. You're good. We've been friends for years. But I'm not a fucking Christopher Nolan head. I'm sorry. It's not happening. You're not gonna do based Christopher Nolan. Fuck it. I'm sorry. It's just, oh god, oh my god. Anyways, Tucker Carlson.
Who?
Who? Katari Carlson.
Oh, okay, him.
Did you see that edit where he had like the Gaza like beret and like the communist beret and like the Gaza sash? Did you see that one image edit?
Well, Tucker Carlson is a Baathist. That's just
Yeah,
known fact.
Athos Carlson.
Yeah, but you know he goes to interview Huckabee, who pretty much gives the I would say, if I were trying to parody Christian Zionism, Huckabee did it. Like I could
Yeah,
not have done
he
it better
did.
myself. And then he gets detained by the Israelis, not entering the country but leaving the country. He's trying to get out of there, but they still decide to detain and question him. And that's once again at the behest of the American ambassador. You're paymasters for the Israeli state. Now, I think we all know the true nature of that relationship, but ostensibly, they're paymasters. And at one point, who was one of the most prominent media figures in America, goes to interview the American ambassador, one of his countrymen, ostensibly once again, and he gets harassed and he gets forced to do the song and dance to get out of security holding, to get out of secondary inspection, so he can get the hell out of Israel. In which case, that's what this is. I mean,
if Tucker ever became president, he would be a Pezeshkian.
I hate to say it, but I think
He's
you're
the
right.
American Aristovich.
I hate to say it, but I think you are 100% correct, and I think Tucker Carlson, what one might think of him, whether he's containment, whatever, I do think that he has helped push things even ever so slight in our direction. So I think he's useful insofar as that's concerned, but I'm not under any delusions that he's quote unquote our guy, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean at this point. But I do agree that if he were to ever assume any sort of high office, getting in directly into elected office or even unelected office would be to his detriment as a political actor.
I just read this thread by my friend Fentanyl Blowdart. What do you guys think about this? Okay,
I love all these names.
yeah, Fentanyl Blowdart. He said everybody assumes that Trump is going to pass the torch of MAGA to JD Vance, but don't sleep on Marco Rubio. There is a perception in Europe that because JD Vance considers himself a heritage American and doesn't consider himself European, that Vance despises Europe. To be fair, the last couple of times JD Vance has talked about Europe, it felt like there was something hatred towards Europe. Now, Marco Rubio, even though his family is from Cuba, he still considers himself a European and talks about his connection to the continent. He is able to connect with people in Europe in a way that JD Vance can't or hasn't yet. Trump likes Rubio, but more importantly, Miriam Adelson likes Rubio more than JD Vance.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rubio, while JD Vance was the more public-facing figure, I thought since the beginning of the administration that Rubio might be the successor, and that he's far more in line with what they have in mind. And not only would he make Europe feel a little more comfortable, I mean, keep in mind that he's the one they sent to the Munich conference this year, he also would be able to have his contacts with the certain quote-unquote right-wing elements across Latin America, the traditionally very pro-American sort of elements across Latin America, in which case also pro-Zionist. And I mean, the conversation about the Isaac Accords that Israel's pushing right now in Latin America I think warrants a show of its own at this point. But yeah, he shores up both of those bases that I don't think J.D. Vance would be able to, because regardless of whatever Vance's true agenda or whatever his paymaster's agenda would be, he does at least outwardly appear as an American isolationist.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment in comparison to Rubio. And it's funny because Rubio gave this ridiculous speech in Europe. I mean, the whole thing was like Gladio Light. He's appealing to previous empires, and I mean, for whose benefit? Well, for Miriam Adelson's benefit.
Yeah, well, we have to lament the old colonial order, despite the fact that it was a net drain to Europe. I mean, I'm not saying the colonial empires were all bad, but especially the era he harkened back to, the late colonial empires, were just a complete net drain and headache on the European nations. At a certain point, it was of no benefit to France to own half of Africa. It was no benefit to the British to own the other half of Africa. There's a reason, beyond American-Soviet efforts, why they cut back on their colonies. And I'll say, I think some of it was justified. For example, I think the reason France was as prosperous as it was because it secured Algeria. And that not for economic reasons, but for security reasons. They were able to stop the raiders that were coming up from North Africa, and they were able to have a buffer there, in which case that allowed them to be much more prosperous in their homeland. And that's where the real wealth of empire came from. It's funny enough, you see a lot of right-wingers do left-wing narrative but based when they talk about the colonial empires, where oh, they went in, they stole all the resources and stuff. No, yes, there was resource extraction that did benefit the European countries to an extent, but most of the wealth of the empire came from security interests, like the example I just said with Algeria, or if we look at the other side of the continent, with the Russians subjugating the Caucasus and Central Asia, it stopped the slave raids. It allowed for a more coherent society and economy to form. Germany's interesting because it didn't have that much of a colonial presence. And the British, they got their wealth through trade because they controlled the sea routes. It's just that simple. But also, the Spanish, similar case where was more of a naval empire. But a lot of the imperial wealth was not from resource extraction, although part of it, not the majority, a lot of it was through securing either security interests to allow for the prospering of other sectors of the economy, or through the control of trade routes. But point being, to get to my ultimate point, the era Rubio hearkened to was, I would say, probably the post-World War I era, the 1919 world order, as it were, where at this point, these empires were, as I had just said, a headache for the Europeans. They had these colonial mandates that they had to rebuild from the Ottoman Empire or from whoever they obtained these from, where it's it was literally just a babysitting job. And there was no security interest for the British to hold that much territory in Africa. Sure, you can make an argument for the Suez Canal. You can make an argument for some of the more resource-rich areas of Africa. You can make an argument for some of their East Asian possessions, just speaking particularly in the British case. But there was also a reason the French wanted to get out of Vietnam, because really there wasn't that much of value there. It was becoming a net drain in the budget. Let's make sure a friendly government's in power and get the hell out of here. And that was the mindset post-World War II, especially when these countries needed to rebuild. But Rubio, funny enough, by hearkening to this era of European greatness, he's asking them to take on more burdens on behalf of the American empire.
For
So you
Ukraine.
can... Oh, yeah, exactly.
He's not saying it, but he means for Ukraine.
Yeah.
And support for whatever endeavor that America decides to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's asking...
with regards to Iran.
Please be better vassal states, and please, raise up your levies to die in the next war. That was the crux of that speech.
Jeez, what a pickle.
But yeah, and yeah, I like I said, I don't like J.D. Vance. I think there's a lot of subversive elements about him, but I fear Rubio more.
Well, Rubio's the old guard. He's more connected to the old guard. That's
Yeah,
his
old
problem.
guard, new face.
Yeah.
Keep in mind his 2016 campaign slogan was "For a New American Century." If it doesn't get any
No.
more on the nose than that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and-
Well, Trump, I just heard,
He's Lithuanian now?
during his address of the nation, said that Iran is building intercontinental missiles that can reach exactly what Bush Jr. said.
What
Yeah.
did Bush Jr. say?
Iraq is very soon going to have missiles that can reach the U.S.
Oh my god.
Isn't it amazing that Bush peddled the narrative that both Iraq and Iran were building long-range missiles to hit the United States, and then when Putin called him and said, "Hey, let's work together on intercontinental defense systems," he was like, "No."
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh,
Yeah, you're either with us or against us. Iran and Iraq are building giant nukes to fire at us. Mr. Putin, you want to help us with air defenses? You want to cooperate? No.
oh my god. I guess he wasn't that serious.
No,
Um,
I guess not. Hey, but at least Trump's going to give us the Golden Dome, okay? That's going to save us
Yeah.
all. That's why he needs Canada, because they're not you guys are slacking off on your NORAD duties. You're not building
Imagine
a missile
getting
system.
Golden Dome by an Amenabadi from Iran.
I'm glad we're past the 3-hour mark, or else I think I'd be throwing things right now. Because, like I said, my tolerance after the 3-hour mark, pretty much anything that isn't Fed posting are going to get me banned, or like just in any other hot
Yeah.
water. Like I said, I'm pretty tolerant when we were past the 3-hour mark, which should be our sign to probably put a bow on this, because I think this is a good episode. We've covered
Yep.
a lot of ground. But any final remarks on Epstein, Iran, the failure of just the broader Western right, or World War III, or
I just think that the response to Epstein has been quite revealing. That's all I'm going to say. Been quite revealing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's
The way they attack you, that's what really astonishes me. There's no people that were previously friends or previously in group chats. There's no friendly debate. There's no it's just like this need to appeal to this very stodgy and stale mainstream consensus. But the mainstream, average people, if you go to them, they openly talk about Jeffrey Epstein. And I think maybe it's the contrarian impulse and a lot of people to be like, oh, these are fucking normies, fuck it. Like, they ruined it. But it's just,
I would say
yeah, I
that
don't know.
let's compare the the online right culture between 2015 and 2019, maybe
Yeah.
2020, maybe 2020.
Maybe.
If these Epstein files were released then, it would have been dynamite.
Way different. Yeah.
Way different, right? And I think what's happened since then is there's a kind of inner acknowledgement with many people on the right, but also on the left, that America's power is waning, that it has
Mm,
had to do extraordinary things in order just to keep the status quo or slow things down. The Ukrainian fomenting the Ukrainian war is just one of them. But back in that first term and just before Trump's first term, people openly talked about, let's say, the balkanization of America, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
But I think what happened along the way is they saw not only that it would not happen, but also that they would be even more poor than they are. And
Hmm.
basically, what they've done is they've put their eggs in one basket because for them, there is only one basket. And if
Right.
that sounds like the trajectory of Richard Spencer, it is. But it's also the trajectory of most of the right now. They'll just forgive it because it's better than being poor. And that's what I mean about like when a culture becomes a late stage civilization, that's what's happened. Is that idealism has been crushed and the pursuit, just surviving takes precedent over everything else. And so guys like Epstein are excused, Trump's association with him is excused.
Hmm.
All these things are excused because the alternative in their eyes is far worse.
One thing I'll say to that, lastly, there's this article that came out today by Daryl Cooper, another target of the Twitter
Uh oh.
right, by the way. Another target of them. And Daryl, not to say like Daryl Cooper says some stupid fucking things too, but he's overall his work is great. I quite like Daryl Cooper. I know he says some things that are kind of stupid, like he responds to things too quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's
I'm
much
not
more
gonna.
better.
I'm not gonna spend my time nickeling and diming his work when he's right.
Exactly, exactly. He's much better in conversation than I think tweeting. I think that they're like again, a lot of these fucking people have Twitter brain. They never like, and maybe I'm just offended because people don't click onto my podcast, but it's like they have Twitter brain. Everything lives and dies on X instead of like the podcast, the articles, the whatever. So, anyways, they attack Daryl Cooper on this basis, and he's tweeted some stupid things, but whatever. I'm not gonna nickel and dime him like you said. He had this article today, and I believe have its paywall, but the one that the free excerpt he gives you is pretty good. And he talks about his research for years on the Epstein thing. Now, he mentions this one short story by Ursula K. Le Guin, the science fiction writer, called The City of Umulas. In this city is this idyllic paradise, and everyone's happy, and it's moderate climate, and everything's perfect. 50s idyllic Americana, for example. But there's one room in the basement of a government building, a broom closet, where there is a small child that lives in horrific conditions, who is lame and imbecilic because of their subjugation, who is fed cornmeal and grease every day. And everybody in the city knows, but the only way that this city of Umulis is a paradise is because of the subjugation and torture of one child. And if anyone were to even pay a kind word to this child, then the city would collapse and there would be utter ruination. And even though all the children are taught around the age of 12 of the existence of this child, and they're filled with rage and anger and impotence, and they feel that they have to do something, nobody does anything. Because it would mean the sacrifice of the happiness and well being and wealth and pleasure of millions. And so that was like a pretty straightforward moral quandary thought probe that Ursula K. Le Guin set up. Now, of course, Daryl Cooper setting this up to the current example of Epstein. Now, I replied to Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made, on Twitter, and I said, the difference is, in Ursula K. Le Guin's thought probe, short story, those people actually get material benefit. Their lives are enriched. But in our scenario, when you feed children to the global elite, you get poorer, your countries are robbed, your birthright, your nations, your people, your way of life is robbed from you, you're denigrated, you get fuck all. In fact, you get worse than nothing. Because there's never a mythical deal that you can cut with these people. There's never a mythical deal where if I just tolerate one Jeffrey Epstein, I can get based world. I can get my paradise. And on the left, you're never going to get your progressive gay race communism utopia. It never happens. There's no amount of deals you can cut. There's no amount of young women and young men and young boys and young girls that you can sacrifice to them, to the global elite. There's never a deal that you can cut with the current iteration of the power structure that's going to deliver you a utopia. It's never happened. It never will. That's the difference between that and the city of Umalis, between our reality and this short story. And a lot of people, they like to con themselves and they like to trick themselves into thinking that they're going to get something out of it. If I just go along with it, if I go to war with Iran, if I go to war with China, whatever, never happens. If I tolerate it. Maybe they won't come for my children, maybe they won't come for me, but they always come for you. And that's the difference. You dance with the devil don't change, he just changes you. And so, yeah. I truly think that people like Hanania, though, I think they're just sick perverts, and that's why they're doing this.
Well, the reason why I particularly detest Hanania is because the man is an ethnic Palestinian who says the things that he says. And
about his own people.
Yeah, it's like
his own people.
I don't care whatever feelings you have about Hamas. Sure, have negative feelings, whatever. But you are justifying the extermination of your own people at the hands of a foreign army in their own land.
Yeah.
And like as sick as I don't know, like maybe like some of the most outspoken Zionists are, it's either A, their people, or B, neither of them are their people. But Hanania has gotten to a point where these are his co-ethnics. He has these opinions on. Like, this is who we sold out to.
If someone in the UK were to say to you, if the Muslims promised to keep it a certain level, or like,
if the Muslims were elite enough, I would accept Islamic Britain.
But it's like any form of globalism. It's like, it's just this sort of like this piecemeal logic is just, it's stupid. And if it's not Jeffrey Epstein, it's Jimmy Savile. If it's not Jimmy Savile, it's whoever, right? It's not. I don't know. It's just the logic that people have around this is astonishing, and it's like I don't know.
Well. Let me return to my eternal final takeaway. No matter what we talk about on the show, my final takeaway is always, the only real country in the world is the Pridnestrovia Moldovan Republic.
Oh man!
Not Transnistria. That's a foreign exonym, actually imposed by the German occupation. Believe it or not. It is the Pridnestrovian Moldovan Republic, last frontier of the Russian Empire, last frontier of the Soviet Union, all in one country. It's the last real country in the world.
Moldova's the fifth Rome.
But, it's actually just
the fifth Rome.
Just one last personal anecdote I will leave the show with. I showed one of my I guess you could say normie adjacent friends just some video documentary of a guy documenting his trip to Pridnestrovia. And he said something along the lines of, if we took all the foreign aid that we gave to Israel and the Third World and gave it to to Pridnestrovia, to Transnistria, they would be a global superpower and they would have started space imperialism already.
Oh.
Look, Pridnestrovia is my Israel. That's all I'm gonna say.
What was that quote by Michelle Houellebecq? in a submission.
I'm not. I don't
I'm
know.
blanking. I'm sorry.
There's no Israel for me.
uh,
There was,
Oh
there
wow.
was, I had this tweet. I said, "There's no Truth and Reconciliation Council for me."
well, look, I'm telling. The days are
Uh.
counting down. We are inevitably moving towards the point where the new headquarters of the Warport will be in Tiraspol. It is inevitable. Okay. Because at some point they're going to be the only place in the world that accepts us. We tried the base in Belgrade, but then Serbia had some problems. We tried Abkhazia, we tried South Ossetia. They didn't really have the infrastructure we were looking for. It's got to be Tiraspol. Look, they have like the last one of those Soviet trams that's like on the thing. I'm doing a terrible job describing this, but it's like the last of like this like defunct Soviet system, and they haven't maintained like pristinely. Okay, it's cleaner than probably every Western city. I don't know if you want to consider Western city, but Budapest. But it's the last frontier of European civilization. Look, as much credit as I've given to the Russians, as much credit as I've given to a number of people in Europe, at the end of the day, it is the last frontier of European civilization right there in Pridnestrovia. And it's just that simple, and there's no getting around it.
McDonald's there?
I think they probably have one of those ramshackled off-brand ones where they keep the local supply chain and put it under some fake name like they do in Russia
Yeah,
proper.
as long as it's that, not like an actual McDonald's.
Yeah,
proper,
I mean, I
yeah.
remember from the early days of the Donbass where they had Don Mac. That was a thing.
Don Mac. Don Mac. Holy
let me see if I can find the picture of that. Hold on. That's what we'll close the show with. I will see if I can find the picture.
That was like the joke I made once where Trump was contemplating like as a peace agreement thing that they would get the KHL to play the NHL. And I'm like, can you imagine the Toronto Maple Leafs losing to HC Donbass?
HC Donbass.
Okay, I will send
yeah,
this
they have a team. Yeah.
to you guys and I'll put it on screen, but this is what we're going to close the show out with. This is from like the early days of like the Counter-Maidan. Let me see here's the comment section so you guys will be able to hopefully see this if or where's the like group chat? I will find this eventually. We will. So here's the chat for the for the thing. So I'll put this up on screen, and you guys will be able to. Okay, it's not letting me send. I'll send it to GSP in Telegram, and then he can send it to you, Gio.
Yeah.
But here is Don Mac. I'm getting up on the screen right now.
But
this
oh my god,
this is
it's ridiculous.
okay. I'm in the wrong folder. I promise. The
Okay,
payoff.
I
will be
just sent
worth
it to you, Gio.
Don Mac. Holy! Oh my god.
It's in Cyrillic too, Don Mac.
Yeah, they changed the M just enough to avoid copyright.
There we go.
Like, yeah.
It's beautiful. It's from the
It's
early
probably
days.
healthier for you than actual like North American McDonald's.
Look, they achieved the RFK Jr. dream of getting rid of the Sneed oils at Don Mac. Okay, and this has been the look. An army marches on its stomach, as Napoleon once told us. This has filled the
This is their
stomachs
base Vatnik sloth
of
right here.
the militia forces up until 2022, up until the proper Russian supply lines took over. It was our friends over at Don Mac, keeping the fire alive.
Oh my god.
And that is what I will leave you with as my final point on this show.
They should have an AI. No, this is terribly offensive. They should have like an AI Givey commercial at Don Mac.
If it were run by proper McDonald's, they probably would. But
Oh my God.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's Strelkov's new job. That's what he can do.
He'll be the manager at Don Mac.
Or spokesman, whatever it takes.
Yeah, he could be like, he'd be like the Yeltsin commercial in McDonald's.
Yeah, it's perfect. We cracked the case once again. Let me just say, give this man your money. You know the drill. But in all seriousness, do you have anything upcoming that you like to plug?
I just released another Painting Discourse video, where I talk about the landscape, but it was more about this quote I found in a Yukio Mishima book, Spring Snow. where he talks about sacredness as coming about from aesthetic distance, and I thought it was a really great thing. And I'll probably have a content minded out this week as well. I had this one recording about different landscape painters, but yeah. So I took a bit of a break where I couldn't post. So yeah, yeah. There you go. It's like 12. It's like 12:30 right now.
Oh yeah, wow, it
Yeah,
is.
so yeah.
So we should be putting a bow on this. I hope everyone's enjoyed this little bit of extensive episode of the War Report. We covered a lot of ground, and we'll see you guys next time. And goodbye.
Goodbye. And
God
take
bless.
care.
Goodbye.